Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 28th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting for Newtown Township. Thank you all for coming. We do have some folks joining us on YouTube this evening, and we welcome them as well. Usually on our first item on the agenda is a moment of silence. I would ask you to join the board for a moment of silence this evening. Let's especially remember those in Florida who are experiencing a hurricane with Hurricane Ian. So please join us. Thank you. Now would you join the board in our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mr. Lewis, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes, Mr. Chairman. However, I will note that the application for the Wawa by Pravco Pineville has been removed from the agenda at the request of the applicant.
Okay. Since it's not on the agenda when we get to our first round of public comment, there's a possibility that could be just the subject of public comment then, which is not quite yet. We got a ways to go. Okay.
Yeah, Dennis, you've got it.
All right. Yes, I will. My voice is not that strong these days. Okay. So we're on to minor approvals. The Historical Architectural Review Board, HARB. Is anyone here from HARB? Would you want to come up to the microphone, please? What's that? I'm here for minor approvals. Minor approvals? Under HARB, are you Denise? Are you Denise? Okay. I missed the Planning Commission.
Good.
I have Planning Commission next.
Hi,
Okay.
Peggy Driscoll.
Okay, Peggy.
I'm a member of HARB. Bill couldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
He asked me to just report for him. At its September 14th meeting, the Historic Architectural Review Board reviewed and recommended that the board grant a certificate of appropriateness for a replacement roof at 1 South Sycamore Street in GAF Chapel Gray.
And you sent us some pictures of surrounding rooftops and shingles. So.
Yeah, we approved it.
Yep.
There's a slate roof there currently, but the cost to replace it with slate is astronomical, so we did approve the Chapel Gray and the GAF.
Okay. Seeing that HARB has approved it, do we have a motion to accept that?
Mr. Chairman, I would frame a motion as follows. It would be a motion to approve the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for Denise Queenie at 1 South Sycamore Street, conditioned on compliance with HARB's memorandum dated September 14th, 2022.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor of approving the HARB certificate, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
we skipped over the Planning Commission report.
Yes. I have it in a slightly different order. But yeah, I had you next, Peggy. So.
Okay, Peggy Driscoll, Chair of the Planning Commission. The first
Welcome.
item on our agenda on September 20th was a zoning hearing board application for Demore at 501 Washington Crossing Road. This is an application for zoning variances and a special exception to permit construction of a single-family detached dwelling on .97 acre parcel on a non-conforming lot. We recommended that the supervisors confirm the history of this lot to determine whether it had always been the current non-conforming size before forwarding the application to the zoning hearing board, or otherwise, we recommend that the board consider opposing. Next, we had the review of changes to the LI-OLI zoning district. Lisa Wolf and Jeremy Stoff of the Bucks County Planning Commission gave a presentation on updating the zoning in the LI-OLI zoning districts. Their presentation showed an overlay district on the interior roadways in the business commons where new uses including apartments, retail shops, and eating places would be permitted. We were given a large packet of information that we will continue to discuss on future agendas, with the Economic Development Committee agreeing to attend our meetings. And our last item was the review of the Joint Comprehensive Plan. Wrightstown and Upper Makefield's Planning Commission chairpersons were also in attendance. Ms. Wolf offered us some guidance on how to review the comp plan. We have agreed to review each principle and its subsequent strategies at our future meetings. The reviews will be an agenda item until we have completed all 9 principles. After each review, the Planning Commission will report to the board on its thoughts and recommendations. If the board has input, we will include that in our reports to the Joint Zoning Council. And that was all we had.
Sounds like a lot.
Any questions? Yeah, we got a lot going on.
Any questions for Planning Commission?
So for the matter with the zoning board about the non-conforming lot, it's your, oh, okay, thought I heard
Yes.
something. It's your opinion that we should wait for more information to come in?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And I'm sure our solicitor will, I think that's later on the agenda for him to.
That is a later agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to special actions. And number 1 under special actions is considering removing the women's right to choose resolution from the table.
Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate to frame a motion, it would be a motion to remove the resolution from the table for additional discussion and consideration.
Okay, that would be the motion. Do we have that motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, so a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board on that? To remove from the table and put it on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of removing the resolution from the table, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, motion carries 3-1. And if I may, for a moment, just acknowledge that Mr. Mack is not here this evening. He has COVID, so he is home in bed. We can't hear you. Okay. Mr. Mack is not with us this evening. He is home in bed. He has COVID, so, and he told me I could say that. Okay. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution has been taken off the table. The motion, more appropriately, has been taken off the table. The motion that was made at the last meeting was to adopt the resolution. I'm not sure I have a resolution number for it. It looks like 2022-R-21. And that was the subject of a good deal of public comment at the last board meeting. It was tabled. Now it's off the table and back in front of the board for discussion and consideration, and it would be appropriate at this time to ask for public comment on the resolution, noting that the board did hear a lot of public comment at its last meeting, and everyone will be given a chance to speak, everybody who wants to speak, but it would be appropriate to ask for folks who did not have a chance to speak at the last meeting to be afforded the ability to come forth first to speak, and then after those folks have spoken, if you wish to speak again and you spoke at the last meeting, that will be acceptable as well. There should also be decorum maintained. I think everybody in the room knows it's an emotional issue. There are two clear sides and probably a lot of gray area in between on this. Please treat your fellow residents with the full respect that you would request that they treat you with. There's going to be no yelling or berating of anybody, and there's going to be no yelling at the board, and all comments that are made will be addressed to the board, not to any individuals in the audience. So that's the way we will proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. So at this point, we'd ask those who did not get a chance to speak two weeks ago to come forward and give their public comment. So if you did not speak, and when you come to the podium, please state your name and where you're from. And we do ask that Newtown residents get a first chance. And again, we will let everyone speak. Okay, are we ready? Please try to keep it brief if you can.
My name is Christine Andrushevitz. I live at 506 Sterling Street in Newtown. There are many things I wanted to address, from misinformed comments to inflammatory statements seeming to raise emotions and distract from the issue at hand. The issue at hand is not trying to convince you which side is better. The issue at hand is whether a resolution supporting Pennsylvania's current law is representative of the residents of Newtown Township. We know there is support for this resolution, as 4 of our 5 supervisors were prepared to draft such a resolution a few weeks ago. Since then, you have heard from numerous residents stating, in fact, that they do not support such a resolution. Based on those letters, emails, and comments, it should be clear that the proposed resolution does not represent all the members of Newtown Township. As has been mentioned before, a resolution on this issue falls outside the purview of the supervisor's role. That alone should be enough to decline making this resolution. If that is not enough, the acknowledgement that this resolution is not representative of Newtown Township as a whole should be more than sufficient to convince you not to proceed. All that being said, it could appear to be an abuse of power if such a resolution were to proceed, only serving to put the weight of the township behind personal opinions. Your personal opinions should bear no weight in township business. Please make the decision that represents all of us residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Debbie McFarlane. I'm at 7 Daffodil Place, Newtown Grant. Abortion is the abrupt ending of a human life. Abortion is a tool that is used for votes and by which it exploits women. As it is weaponized, it weaponizes the slaughter of a baby under the guise of women's rights. Abortion is an industry, a very, very profitable industry. And it is now, abortion, more dangerous than it ever was. With the ability to order through the mail pills to poison the baby in utero without the requirement of the mother to be seen in person by a medical doctor to assess the gestation period, how many weeks far along she is, and whether that pill would be effective enough, or series of pills, to poison that baby, to end that baby's life. It's danger for the baby and the mother. I graduated in 1978 from high school, Catholic co-ed high school, a class of 144. There were 12 pregnant girls in my class 2 before senior year, 10 senior year, 16 and 17-year-olds. I remember thinking as a 16-year-old, in the most self-conscious, immature period of my life, how are these girls going to handle this? Instantaneously, they were thrust into adulthood. No more carefree fun, sports, parties, late nights, freedom. What would they do, we all wondered. And then we watched and witnessed their courage and commitment to lives outside of their own, whom they were now responsible for. They walked the hallways to class every day wearing maternity uniforms. We respected them, and we knew how tough it was for them. They all went on to carry their babies to term in the 70s, when they could have had an abortion legally. They looked to the adults in their lives for guidance and support. I don't remember how many girls raised their babies themselves or how many gave them up to adoption, but what I'll never forget is that they gave those babies life. I actually had the pleasure of meeting one of those babies a couple years ago at my 40th high school reunion. And I looked at him, he introduced himself to me, and I thought, what a miracle. He was given the right to life.
Thank you.
I would first just like to say, if Aaron Judge hits his 6th on tonight while this meeting is going on, I'm going to work hard to vote all of you out for not rescheduling this for Thursday. Go, Aaron. Yeah, I'm a New Jersey boy like Mehmet Oz. Okay, American freedom. I am an American.
Do you want to state your name?
Oh, okay. Steve C.K., Newtown resident since 1985. American freedom. I am an American speaking these words to fellow Americans. These are divisive times. The issue of the freedom of women to make decisions about their own bodies is an issue that adds to this divisive atmosphere that is filled with strong emotion and conviction and is sadly tearing our nation apart. But I would like to offer up some common ground for fellow Americans to stand on so we can come together despite our diversity of viewpoints and allow our shared value of freedom to guide us tonight to passing this resolution, a resolution of the Township of Newtown, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, affirming the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors' commitment to valuing reproductive rights and supporting access to abortion, together as one unified American community. First, let me remind you of some facts. There is no consensus among philosophers and theologians of diverse faiths as to when human life begins. Yet, I do not disrespect any such belief any individual holds, and fully support every person's right to act with respect to their own lives in accordance with those beliefs. It is also a fact that hundreds of years ago, people flocked to our shores due to religious persecution. The old world was denying freedom to individuals to practice their religious faiths. Immigrants saw in the New World an opportunity to freely practice their religious faiths without interference from other citizens or the government. Religious freedom is therefore a defining essence of the American character. Look around Newtown, which was present at our founding, and see today how many houses of worship there are. American religious freedom thrives as it should. It is also a fact that in 1776, Americans started a revolution, in great part to throw off the onerous yoke of a king and instead founded a new government whereby the freedom of individuals was paramount. Unfortunately, the freedom of blacks and women took many decades to be actualized. But the ideal of freedom, American freedom, was that guiding light that inspired and actualized their eventual freedom. For over 50 years, American women had reproductive freedom enshrined in a Supreme Court interpretation of our Constitution. Now that freedom is being eroded, and the just fight to restore that freedom has begun throughout our country. As a Newtown resident, I am therefore proud that the resolution before us is a strong local defense of the fundamental American value of freedom for all its citizens. I compliment the supervisors who have taken the time to draft and then hopefully enact it tonight. The resolution is consistent with the two facts I mentioned above, the American value of religious freedom and the American value of individual freedom, unfettered by the arbitrary rule of a despotic government. In accordance with our shared American values of religious and individual freedom, I would never support any infringement on anyone's religious liberty. I, and I expect you as well, would want to be free to make personal choices about reproductive issues in accordance with your own religious beliefs and principles. If you want to encourage within your own religious group any kind of restrictions on abortion, I, as an American who loves liberty, will adamantly defend that right for you. But on the other hand, I do not expect and will fight just as vigorously against any challenge to the exercise of my religious beliefs and principles. If my religious beliefs demand the reproductive freedom of women, I expect America, the land of liberty, to uphold that freedom for my group. In a well-educated democracy, I expect a robust, intelligent, passionate, and civil debate about political issues. We're trying to have that discussion here tonight. One result of such conversations, which truly seek common ground and not simply loud noises, could be initiatives that remove economic barriers from families which are overwhelmed with the thought of caring for another child, or initiatives that fund robust adoption services. The existence and funding of such institutions might influence personal reproductive decisions. But participation in these initiatives must be freely chosen by the individuals involved and not mandated by an all-powerful government, because then the fundamental shared value, American value, of individual freedom would be crushed. And personally, I do not feel any amount of discussion or institutional support would lead me to accept a government mandate to complete a pregnancy by a woman who has suffered incest or rape. To me, that smacks of an ideology of misogyny and totalitarian religious zealotry, so antithetical to the American essence. I therefore vehemently support the adoption of this resolution in the name of the fundamental American values of religious and individual freedom, common ground upon which all Americans should proudly stand. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and thank you for listening. Steve C.K., an American from Newtown, Pennsylvania.
Jessica Akia, 112 Gerard Terrace. There is no question when we are faced with the choices every day that we have the choices to do something will result in a positive or a negative consequence. For example, I can help carry or pay for someone's groceries, and that would most likely end in a positive result. Or if I steal groceries from the store or someone, that would end in a negative result. When engaging in sexual activity, animals can birth natural offspring from these interactions. Thus, the choice of human conscious decision of their engagements can happen in the same natural way. They are aware of potential results. In these cases, because a decision was made, a baby could be naturally conceived. At this point, it is a new living being. If it wasn't, it would basically be disposed of the body by naturally. Our founding fathers of our country stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Thus, in this case, the child must now be at the stage of life where he or she has been given those rights. Unalienable, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is defined, and I quote, "that which cannot be given away or taken away." What we are talking about here again is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. According to the website health.pa.gov, in the year 2020, the abortion statistics as stated in that report, Pennsylvania-induced abortions, were 32,123. Do you like the word cutting? It normally has negative connotations because their report does not hide the facts of their procedural names. Almost 50% of them, or 14,278, involved suction cutterage procedures. And let me be honest and tell you why generally abortion clinics do these procedures around 24 weeks and do not show mothers the ultrasounds nor give them to even see the option. Many of these procedures can permanently damage the uterus, and this presents obvious legal liabilities. So they wait till they can see the baby on the sonogram. This sonogram is my nephew, Matthew, 19 weeks. You can certainly see that it's a baby. In this one, it's a close-up. He's holding his hand near his nose and his little eyes. I love these. These are my nephew, and it's important to me. He's 9 years old now. Of these procedures done in Pennsylvania, it was reported 9 of those women that year left with major complications, resulting to terminations. That's 618 babies aborted each week, or 88 per day. If we saw this statistic with our citizen residents involved in an active war or to COVID deaths, there would be no question how people would react. They would say, "Step up, stop this is wrong." We are fooling ourselves if we believe abortion clinics or abortionists have a best interest at heart for these women and that they can walk away without pain. Isn't it ironic in a society where you cannot turn on the media outlets without seeing ads to step up and help save dogs and cats or foster them? You don't believe me? Every day, just on animal abuse videos and Facebook and Instagram, we see thousands of upset or angry comments are made, and just as many equal amounts of happy and rejoicing comments when animals are saved. I know this because I follow many videos on Unilad and Dodo, and I see them myself. I also posed you to think about prisoners. Why do they have more opportunity to live than an undefended innocent child in the womb? It's quite a shame that a child cannot call the governor's office and ask for commutation of his or her death penalty. How much better would we be as a community if we had the same joy towards all those saves with human babies? Instead of letting these abortion clinics and those trying to defend pro-choice arguments that are not pro-women, our community and government should be doing our best to support and teach our women and men, first with education and good decision-making, fiscal responsibility education, and supporting our future mothers and fathers with resources. There are 156 crisis pregnancy centers that already exist in Pennsylvania, and they are doing just that. Many would send these above women to abortion clinics to get rid of the problem, but that does not solve it. Take a bad stain, for example. You can remove the initial problem, but it doesn't really remove the stain. It still shows, and it bothers us every time we see it. Our local organizations that are pro-life offer financial assistance, education, supplies, adoption resources, counseling, and healing. Just one out of many, see 64 a year just in their healing retreats. I know because I asked her, and she had that statistic. Pennsylvania is one of the highest ranking states in abortion, number 14 in the United States, as well as your own Bucks County has one of the highest abortion numbers in the state. I question why, as a council of elected township officials, that you're taking on this issue that is not normal township protocol and a blatant misuse of power. I'm a young woman, and there are thousands of young women in your township who feel the same. Please understand you do not speak for all women as a board. We are at a new turning point in history. I urge the council and local citizens to not be known for being a city, state, or community of death, but one of life. I urge you to not partake or vote in this resolution. Thank you very much for letting me speak and for the transparency. I just have to say that I mentioned earlier that the transparency, I want to say that it was nice that you guys read those letters from the people from your township last week. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Charles Briskin. I'm a Newtown resident for 4.5 years, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Oftentimes, this issue is couched in terms of, from a point of religious perspective. And my guess is that very few people here have spent time in a synagogue hearing from a rabbi about the Jewish perspective and Jewish understandings of the concept of life and when life begins. I do want to state, as our traditions are very clear, that I am one who believes in the sanctity of life, and I believe in the importance of a right for a woman to choose what she is going to do with her body, and that she needs to have agency over that. I just want to share a couple of lessons from Jewish traditions. So first of all, I certainly respect the view of some Christians who believe that life begins at conception. This, however, is not the Jewish view. Centuries of Jewish legal texts and Torah texts upon which the legal texts are founded teach us the difference between a fetus and a human life. Those who are familiar with the story in the book of Exodus teach us when men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results and there is no other damage, the one responsible shall be fined. The damages paid are monetary. It is not a capital offense. If it were a capital offense, for example, and if a person took the life of another, it would be applied for a life, but the non-capital offense, the fine, is because the fetus is not considered a person. The Talmud teaches, the Code of Jewish Law, that for the first 40 days of pregnancy, the fetus is mere fluid. It is like water and has no legal significance. The preeminent 11th century sage known as Rashi teaches that the fetus does not obtain the status of personhood until the head emerges from the birth canal and takes its first breath. Jewish sources are unequivocal. The health and well-being of the woman always takes precedent over the fetus until the fetus is born. At that point, both have rights, but not before. The fetus is part of the woman and does not have the rights independent of her, according to Jewish tradition. Bottom line, and I know this is something that is different from a lot of other faith traditions, and I appreciate the different way that we come to this. But bottom line is that Jewish sources are clear and consistent from the time of the Torah and Hebrew Bible through the Talmud, later stages and today. Life does not begin at conception. A fetus is considered a full life with rights once it is born, and the health and the well-being of the mother will always take precedent. Jews do view reproductive rights differently than many Christians, and to restrict access to reproductive health services because of a Christian worldview is a violation of the First Amendment. And I think it's important that we understand the issues of religious freedom that are here. So I do thank you for bringing this resolution to the floor. We know that we are living in a society in which governments indeed are trying to impose their will on women in a way that would restrict access to reproductive health care. And I think it's important that this town and the township and the supervisors pass this resolution. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rabbi Aaron Gaber. I serve Congregation Brothers of Israel, and I am a resident of Newtown. As my colleague Rabbi Briskin gave to you and shared with you a history of where life begins according to Judaism, I would like to share with you my understanding and the Jewish understanding of religious freedom. The Jewish people were never strangers to religious persecution and times over thousands of years where we were prevented from practicing our own faith in our own way. So coming to America and living under the Constitution, and most especially the First Amendment that says that the Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. In those two statements, it is very clear that religious freedom and our understanding in the Jewish community, and my understanding as a rabbi and as a human being, is that each individual person, human being, has religious freedom and religious rights for their own. To me, this is where I will absolutely fight with every breath, that my colleagues who believe life begins at conception will be able to enact their views for themselves and for their communities and for their people. I would expect the same for them to act with every breath and every part of their lives to respect my Jewish belief and our religious freedom and understand that we come from different perspectives, but we all believe in the same sanctity of life and what that means for each of our traditions. I stand here tonight as a father and a grandfather, a father of two girls, two young women of age, and one granddaughter who is almost 11 months old. And I stand here tonight asking you to support this resolution, understanding that while you as the township supervisors do not have the perhaps all of the ability to legislate exactly what will happen both in our county and our state and in our country, but making a stand for religious freedom for every individual. Religious freedom means that each individual has their right to make their own decisions. Women have the right to make a decision with their medical providers, with their family, as to what they want to do about their own body. They have the right to consult with their own religious leaders and with their family to know and understand what they want to do with their own body. And that is what I hope and I fight for my daughters, for my granddaughter, and for all women and men in this country should have the right to their own religious freedom. So I invite you, and I hope that you will support this amendment and stand up as a community to say that while there are differences of beliefs and understandings about this issue, this ensures that every individual has the ability to make their own religious and faith-based decisions. Thank you. Thank you for the time this evening.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Hello, I'll be brief. My name is Holly McGarry, and I'm a resident of Newtown Township. I'm speaking tonight to encourage the board to pass the resolution supporting women's reproductive rights in the state of Pennsylvania. I have a deeply personal story that I decided to share with you tonight because it is something that millions of women around the country and the world have experienced. I had an unexpected pregnancy. In fact, I was actively trying to prevent pregnancy by using the Mirena IUD. I was in the category of the 0.01% of women who can become pregnant despite having this type of IUD. When I found out I was pregnant, I had my first ever panic attack, and my anxiety was uncontrollable. I'm obviously still a little emotional about it. The only thing that comforted me was when my OBGYN told me not to worry, I have options. In the end, I really didn't have an option. After a week of blood draws and vaginal ultrasounds, I was diagnosed with an ectopic pregnancy, which is a non-viable embryo, and in order to prevent losing my fallopian tubes and for my health, I needed to have a medical abortion. I don't know what I would have done if this was a viable pregnancy. I'll never know. But I am certainly glad I didn't have politicians and strangers in the room with me, with my doctor, forcing me to make the decision that they feel is best. I applaud women who are pro-life for themselves because that is the choice they made for themselves. I would never presume what is right for another woman because that is her body, not mine. I encourage the board to pass the resolution because I know that to be a full citizen of this country, I deserve to have full autonomy over the choices I make for my own body. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Winkler. I live in Newtown Grant, and I've lived in Newtown since 1993. So I'd like to start off by saying that I'm against the resolution. A lot of people last week and some other speakers today did a great job of explaining the reasons. My reasons would include that the job of a township supervisor is not to do what I consider activism and do things like this. Resolutions like this, you should focus on doing, taking care of our township and things like which you've been doing very well. The other point I'd like to make is that 2 weeks ago, you heard a testimony from a woman who had an abortion and all the horrible side effects that followed from it. And, she was, And this happens millions of times in the United States every year. And I think you need to look at the cost in actual numbers in terms of lives that are affected by this in our area. For example, within a 30-minute drive of here, there are 2 abortion clinics. There's one in Warminster, and there's one in Northeast Philadelphia. The one in Warminster performs around 600 abortions a year, and the one in Northeast Philadelphia performs about 2,200 abortions per year. So there's a lot of there's a lot of horrible things happening in terms of babies being murdered, and in addition to that, there's horrible side effects for the parents. For example, there have been ministries formed that just to deal with the effects of abortion. For example, Rachel's Vineyard is an example of one of those ministries that have been put together to help women and also the men deal with the effects of abortion. And the other point I'd like to make is that in 1999, Planned Parenthood got into Warminster because of the township supervisors. And this seems like this is an entryway to get an abortion clinic into Newtown. That's my impression of it. I hope that's not the case, but you can see the parallels between what happened in 1999 in Warminster and what could happen now. So that's why I'm opposed to this. This is just, I'm opposed to it. Again, the loss of life, the horrible side effects that happen from it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please.
My name's Barbara Simmons. I have been a member of Newtown since 1982. I've raised 2 daughters here and a granddaughter who is now 26 years old. When I graduated high school, abortion was not legal, and I soon began to meet women who were suffering. And they were suffering because these were married women, they had no money, or they were dealing with domestic violence. And I played a role in making sure they got to a safe place to get an abortion. And I never regretted that role. And the right that has been taken away from me, my daughters, and my granddaughters is what brought me here tonight. And I want to encourage you, urge you, to bring this resolution to fruition because it will help my daughters, my granddaughter, and myself feel as if you care about our rights. And I do think that that is one of the jobs of township supervisors. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janice Shemick, and I've been here since 1969. Brought my 4 babies here to raise, and have always been very happy here. Probably one of the oldest people in the room. And my generation fought for Roe v. Wade. I personally have been impacted by the lack of the availability of a safe abortion. I lost a young lady by the name of Gretchen Simpson when she was 17 years old. And the reason we lost her was that she was a victim of incest and there were no safe abortions available. It's not, oh, because I didn't want to raise it. It wasn't because this isn't a good time. It was, she was in a crisis and she had no place to go. And so she was a victim of a very bad abortion. There was nothing available to her. In fact, when they saw how bad the abortion had gone, there was no place for her to go. She was threatened with going to jail instead of to a hospital, and she died a week later. I think of her every day. And when that sham of a Supreme Court that, when they were affirmed, said that they considered Roe v. Wade to be settled law, as soon as they got in there, turned on it and lied and overturned Roe v. Wade. And I say, how can you respect something that supposedly our highest court does They are not going for the law. It's strictly political. And I say, anybody here that doesn't believe in it and doesn't want an abortion, don't have one. But as for my friend, Gretchen Simpson, she had what she considered to be no choice. She had that abortion and she lost her life for it. I have a daughter, who had an issue when she was pregnant, and they had no choice but to induce a pregnancy. If they have no exception, it comes to that, my daughter would have lost her life. However, we were lucky. They were able to induce her, and both the baby and my daughter lived. The option, we are just asking for the option. It's our right to have that option. And so that's how I truly feel. I feel that, again, that we should have our right, our members of our family should have our right. And because somebody thinks that we shouldn't have that right, I say shame on you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Helen Ruddy, and I am a retired nurse practitioner. I worked for 20 years in women's health. I worked in a psychiatric hospital. I worked in student health. I worked in primary care. And needless to say, I had many patients who encountered an unplanned pregnancy. One of the things that I find, and I am of an age where I remember the days before, one of the things that I find the most baffling is that the right to personal autonomy is something that everyone's been talking about. The right to personal autonomy as to whether you're going to get a vaccine. I also worked in employee health, where the employees of the hospital were required to get a vaccine. But if their religious beliefs or their personal autonomy said that they were not going to do that, they had the right to choose. So I don't understand why in one case someone can decide that they're not going to have a vaccine to protect the population for public health, and at the same time decide that a woman in the privacy of her own home with her family and with her healthcare provider cannot decide what she wants to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Abbracciamento from Newtown Township. Good evening, Dennis, Ellen, Philip, and Kyle. I attended the last meeting and made mental notes, which I would like now to publicly address. To state my position up front, I don't believe that the board should be taking any stance on a contentious issue, which is better addressed at the state level. To do so encourages unnecessary divisiveness among our fellow residents. In addition, we are 5 weeks away from deciding this issue at the state level where it ought to be decided. Unfortunately, you have made this a referendum on abortion rights, and as a result, we need to respond. I suspect that if the tables were turned and a symbolic resolution was proposed protecting the rights of the unborn, you would question the appropriateness of the resolution given the town's diverse views on the matter. By the way, I would agree with you. Ellen, I'm quoting your words from an interview given to The Patch, dated October 20th, 2021. The single most pressing issue you stated during your campaign is addressing environmental issues such as renewable energy and green infrastructure. You also mentioned that the best advice ever received is to listen to the community and be a champion for your neighbors. Not mentioned in your comments is your advocacy for abortion rights. You mentioned prior to the last meeting that this symbolic resolution would be your way to urge state legislators to keep intact the abortion access provisions written into our state constitution. Well, what does our state constitution have to say on this matter? Pennsylvania does not have trigger laws enshrined in the Constitution. Abortions are legal up to the 24th week of pregnancy, about 5 months. If the mother's health is at risk, then abortion after 24 weeks is allowed. In July of this year, a Harvard-Harris poll was released regarding our country's view on abortion access. While I acknowledge that wording can impact the results of the survey, the trend is clear. 72% of Americans would allow abortion only until the 15th week of pregnancy or even a more restrictive law. 60% of Democrats believe abortion should be prohibited after the 15th week of pregnancy or in favor of a more restrictive law. 75% of women support the 15-week cutoff or a more restrictive law, while 69% of men agree with that timeline. The conclusion is our state constitution laws regarding this matter is out of sync with the majority of Americans regarding abortion access. I would like now to address comments from some board members when stating their reasons for advocating passage of the resolution. Philip, you mentioned that you didn't understand the connection some people were making between Nazi Germany and abortion. I would like to clarify that for you. In no way are we equating Hitler with the woman who has an abortion, nor the doctor who performs the abortion. The only point that we are trying to make is that to legitimize abortion, one needs to delegitimize the fetus. Philip, you also stated that as a man, you had no say in this matter since it is a woman's decision what to do with her body. If you truly believe this line of reasoning, then you should abstain from voting on the resolution since you have nothing to add. Finally, I would like to address, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I'm not, I don't. Finally, I would like to address Ellen's comments citing Jewish law about the baby not being a person until after it's born. Since I have a great amount of respect and reverence for the Jewish faith, and this position seemed to be at odds with what I thought was the teaching of Judaism, I needed to research this, and I did. While I'm open to being corrected by my Jewish brethren, there seems to be a range of Jewish thought on the matter. Rabbinic commentary, the Talmud, states that abortion is permissible to preserve the life and emotional well-being of the mother. It can also extend, depending on the branch of Judaism, should the child in the womb have a serious medical issue. Outside of these exceptions, I could find no rabbi preaching that abortion is a Jewish value. The Catholic view regarding abortion is not a conviction born of dogma, but moral reasoning, aided and abetted by science. We view the child in the womb not as a potential human life, but a human life with potential. It is also a fundamental principle of ethics that an innocent human life should never be taken. You might not agree with my line of reasoning, but it should be debated in the public square against opposing views to see who can garner the most support. In summary, perhaps this unnecessary dialogue has allowed us both to state our case and come away with a better understanding of the thoughts of people who differ from our own. We truly live in a community with a range of views on this topic, and the Township Board should have the humility to acknowledge this fact. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Richard Hepburn. I've been a resident of this township for about a little over 6 years. And I come to speak on this issue, and people talk about the right to choose. And I believe that's a two-part question. There's a legal right and a moral right to choose. Now, I'm the product of a very Orthodox Catholic upbringing. I understand the idea that the fetus is a separate, distinct human being from the instant of conception until it dies of old age. However, not everyone shares that belief. And if you believe that, and I respect that belief, I have trouble arguing against it, that anyone who performs an abortion, who has an abortion, is an evildoer. If you believe that, and there's many in this audience who do, and I respect that, but I also beg of you, have faith in God. If abortionists and people who have abortions have done an evil deed, trust God to punish them. Don't expect the state of Pennsylvania to punish them. The police have enough to do. The courts have enough to do. Prisons are full enough. We don't need to put people under arrest, on trial, and in jail because they don't share that belief. Have faith in God. It'll all come out in the end. Just as an aside, I believe adultery is a terrible, terrible, evil act. However, if the police arrested and we tried and put in jail everyone who broke that commandment, the police would have not much else to do. So, again, just let me repeat. It's not do you have a right to choose, it's how we want to use the police power of the state. And I think the police power of the state should be left out of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hepburn.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Mack. I am a Newtown resident. I don't have prepared speech, but I did want to speak from my heart. I am a female, as you see, a mother, and I am a Catholic. I also am a scientist. I went to school, so I do understand basic biology. I have a biology degree. I can tell you that life does begin at conception. There is a beating heart at 5 or 6 weeks of gestation. And I know that for a fact because I saw my twins at 6 weeks of gestation and I saw the beating heart with them. So that is a life. I also believe that the argument that's given for abortion is dehumanizing, and that is the same type of argument that they used for slavery. It's the same argument they used for the Jewish people. They dehumanized them. Hitler and the Nazis actually shaved their head and tattooed them so that they didn't have names, they had numbers. They dehumanized them. And that's the same thing that's being done with a child. The child is a human. Now, I understand women want their rights to their body, and they should have the rights to their body, but there is a separate body inside them. It is a life, and that should be protected. And our government protects the right to life for all of its citizens. So a child is a citizen. That right should be protected. And I urge you not to vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanne Miller. I live in Newtown since 1990. I think I'm the first to re-speak, so hopefully everyone else got a chance, but I did wait till the line stopped growing. I wanted to address a couple things. One, I appreciate the robust discussion we're having about abortion. It does have to happen. We do have to talk about it. We're not going to resolve it here, and we're not going to convince anybody. To the gentleman who said that people might think someone with abortion was an evildoer, I hope that no pro-life people here treat anybody that had an abortion as an evildoer. That's not how I think most people feel about that. Next thing that someone said, We can all throw facts. We just had 2 alternate facts. The one gentleman earlier on said, it's fact, science says life begins at conception, or he says it doesn't, and that it's a separate, and then someone else just said it does start at conception. Scientifically, I think it has been proven that life does start at conception. So that's just some things that they talked about today. But I'm talking because I am not opposing the resolution based on pro-life or pro-choice. I'm opposing this resolution because it is not under your duties or responsibilities to make this resolution. You're taking your own personal view and attempting to make a statement on behalf of Newtown Township. I've reviewed your duties and mission. I've reviewed the second-class township code, local ordinances, and the council manager form of organization, as well as both the ICMA code of ethics and the mission statement from them, which this board has adopted. I don't see anything in these giving you either the right or the duty to make a resolution of this nature. If anything, I see the opposite. The mission of the board is in the service of the community. Your charge under the second-class township code is the general governance of the township and the execution of legislative, executive, and administrative powers in order to ensure sound fiscal management and to secure the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the township. Tenet 7 under the ICMA is to refrain from all political activities which undermine public confidence in professional administrators. And Tenet 12 states, public office is a public trust. A member shall not leverage his or her position for personal gain or benefit. So as far as public trust goes, I think you're losing it because we can't trust a board who's going outside their said duties to make a personal statement to the state. It's not your job. You don't speak for us on these types of matters. I also looked at the annual budget because my background's bookkeeping and accounting. I was kind of curious. You guys have revenues of $16 million, expenses of $14.9 million, pretty significant. And in that, there's lots of categories like salaries of your township departments, emergency services, public works, parks and recreation. I'm only naming a couple. Historic Architectural Review Board. All things related to Newtown. What I don't see in your budget is making resolutions on political matters for Newtown Township. And I'm thinking it's probably going to take money for you guys to do that. That's not in the budget. The budget does not have you guys making these public resolutions on state or federal levels. So I don't know what your justification is in speaking for Newtown Township and using any taxpayer dollars or time to put forth this resolution. From the turnout last meeting, you do not speak for all of Newtown Township, nor were you put in your position to speak for Newtown Township on matters that are decided on the state or federal level. I think you or some of you on the board are taking a personal political opinion and trying to use your platform as a Newtown supervisor to further your personal political position. And that's not what our local government is set here to do. So I'm asking, not pro-choice or pro-life, I'm asking you not to make a resolution that is not under your jurisdiction to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Please
Good
proceed.
evening, everyone. Tonight I've heard so many different arguments and opinions about freedom and liberty. So many I can't even tell you.
Want to state your name?
I've also heard
Excuse me,
Could you state your name?
a lot of opinions about the beginning of life,
Excuse
where
me,
it
ma'am,
begins,
ma'am,
a different
ma'am.
perspective.
Oh, can you identify yourself for the record, please?
Pardon me?
Can you identify yourself, please?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. My name is Emma Keene. I'm a member of St. Andrew's Parish. My mother and a grandmother. That helps you.
And please
Thank you very much.
please start over.
Okay. Like I said, I've heard many references tonight to freedom and liberty and autonomy. I've also heard many different opinions about religious belief, when life begins, different takes on that. And so I thought what I would do in explaining my opposition to your proposition is to reduce it to two salient facts instead of all of these diatribes. And the first one, the fact that I want to account you with is that in 1776, our founding fathers gave us an important document. It was called the Declaration of Independence. And if I can quote it for you tonight, it said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And in that Declaration of Independence, there's no mention of the government. The government does not give you those rights. Those rights are given to you by your Creator. They are inalienable rights. These words, okay, were considered revolutionary in 1776 as a political document. No one had ever heard mentioned that individuals would have certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for that reason, many nations around the world use that Declaration of Independence as a model for our country. The second salient fact that I would like to point out to you tonight is this. In the 21st century, medical science has determined that life begins with the existence of a heartbeat, and life ends, okay, when the heartbeat is no longer present. I hope that you will consider these two salient facts, the tradition of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in our country's history, and the fact that life begins with a heartbeat. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christina Doherty from Bensalem Township. I've been hearing a lot of words for like religious freedom, freedom of choice, liberty, and of course the whole controversy has been Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade, the reason it was reversed was it was a bad law, and that's what they found out. And thank goodness, now it's back to the states. We now have a voice. That's a democratic republic. You want to talk democracy? Now we have a voice. We now have tyranny off our backs. You want freedom? Well, now you don't have this federal government telling us what to do. You now can go to your state legislators, your governor, your local representatives, and vote what laws you want. But I don't hear vote here. I hear you went through this, and I'm like, why? It's right now legal in Pennsylvania to have an abortion up to 24 weeks. Let the people have a voice at the election ballot. That's freedom. That's liberty. That's the democratic process that you keep wanting to defend. Let's defend it. Table this. This is not appropriate. It really isn't. Let it go back to the voters, what they want when it comes to the voting booth. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Bromberg. I am a resident of Newtown Township. I was not planning on speaking today, so I am following somebody who is coming to speak again. After hearing some of the conversations, I felt a need as a woman to come up and speak and share some of my stories. First of all, I appreciate that some of my fellow speakers are very protective of me as a Jew to make sure that, how our, numbers on arms and things like that. But according to Jewish law, a baby is referred to as a rodef, a pursuer, which means that no matter what, the mother's life outweighs the baby. And nobody's asking when life starts of the baby. The mother's life outweighs the baby's life. That's my first point. My second point is I've spent several years as an employee of NOVA, the Network of Victims Assistance. I have spent time in the emergency room with women. I've spent time with a 15-year-old who was raped by her father. I've spent time with a 32-year-old woman who was slipped something in her drink and woke up 2 days later. The pill, the abortion pill, does not destroy a baby. The abortion pill stops the egg from implanting in the uterus. Those drugs do not do anything to the fetus, the baby. It just stops it from growing. And the third thing that I would like to share is that I gave birth at 26 weeks. My child weighed 1 pound and 13 ounces. So, you know, most chickens you pick up are much less than that. She survived. She is now an adult. I understand the idea of seeing a small baby and worrying about them. I was terrified for her for months. But that was my choice. I wanted her, and she was able to live. That young woman is now 23. She wants to be a mother, and she is terrified because she is afraid that she will become pregnant out of choice, and something will be wrong with that baby, and she will not be able to control what is happening with her life or with the baby's life. I know that, you know, we're talking about as a nation, as a state, as a township, and I appreciate that you are taking a stand. We all have to start where we can, where we have our voices, and I appreciate that you are putting out your voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bromberg, thank you.
Karen Z. April, Newtown Grant, as my husband always says, the biggest and the best. I wasn't coming here. I said goodbye to him. I said, I'll watch it. I'll see what happens. But I wasn't coming here because I didn't want to push my views on other people until I started watching and listening. And that's what people have to do, watch and listen. There's people coming to the United States from every country, everywhere. Everybody watches us. Everybody looks to see the best place to be. Right now, we're being taken over by all the politicians. I'm not saying this is a Democratic situation or a Republican situation, but it's a situation that it has been pushed in front of us at election time. They've always had, well, not always, they've had Roe v. Wade for a lot of years. Prior to that, there were women in back alleys having abortions. I was told this by lots of my family members because I always dealt with all the old people instead of the young people. They explained to me how horrible it was, how sex is always going to be here, and it's always going to somehow result with a pregnancy. If by some reason you cannot afford a baby, if it's incest, if it's whatever situation, a woman has a right to their own body to say what they should do. My mother and my aunts told me about the people in the past that up the back alleys with the hangers, that one person rescued another in my family. One of the people that had had the abortion, she was bleeding so profusely, she wound up with blood poison. We can't go backwards in life. You have to go forward. You know, many people want to go backwards and visit this and do that. This is the United States. We're not a third world country. We have to do what the right thing is for everybody. And I do think every woman should speak up when they feel somebody pulling at their strings. It's being pulled at our strings for voting, for the males that want to bully the females. You know, we have a right as women to have a right to our own body. Now, I became a grandmother in the past couple years. Looking at those ultrasounds was the best thing I ever did. I looked at them and I actually questioned myself, saying, all right, I'm saying that we have a right to our own body. But look at these beautiful little children that are here. Look at what comes out of abortion. But these little children are not little children until they're away from their mother. They cannot live without their mother inside, taking care of them, feeding them, nurturing them. It's the mother's decision on what to be done. Now, I know in this audience alone, I'm outnumbered. And that's fine. I just have a right to my opinion. And my opinion is you have to do what's good for yourself in a situation of trauma. Many, many people have trauma. Just to say you're killing that child, no, you're not. If you wouldn't have had sex, you wouldn't have had to worry about it. And, you know, there's old people, there's young people. Everybody has a different situation. And they're not looking at different situations. They're only looking at either they're alive or they're dead. They're not actually alive until they are born. I was raised with that. I will believe that, my heart and soul. And I think every single woman should be able to put this to the voting booth. They all have a right to tell the United States what we want. It should not be a political issue, and it should not be one neighbor against another. That's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Draper.
Please refrain from making any noises or comments while someone else is speaking. Thank you.
Good evening.
Like that one.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Nowicki. I'm a resident of Newtown. I first want to thank the board for bringing forth this resolution for consideration. I believe it does fall under your purview regarding the health and well-being of residents of Newtown. It's evident from all the speakers here tonight that reproductive health care is a deeply personal decision. As such, it should be maintained as a deeply personal choice without government interference. What's right for me may not be right for someone else, but that freedom to make medical choices should remain as one of our principles in a democratic society. We are in unprecedented times that call for unprecedented action, because while we demand many freedoms and liberties, we simultaneously take away rights and choices for reproductive health care. We are actively oppressing the ability to govern one's own body. That's why I'm here to support the passing of the resolution supporting reproductive rights and send the message to the state that here in Newtown, we protect freedoms and rights and choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I see Mr. McCarron coming to the podium, but
I want to read a comment by my wife.
Okay, I was just going to. I noticed some other folks might be queuing up that spoke the last time, so I just want to make sure. Have we gotten through everyone who has not spoken?
My name is Steve Javy. I'm a deacon at St. Andrew Parish in Newtown. Two things I want to address tonight. One, and the first issue is when life begins, and it really, in my opinion, is not a religious issue whatsoever. And I'll read from the American College of Pediatricians. The predominance of human biological research confirms that human life begins at conception, at fertilization. The human being emerges as genetically distinct, a living human organism, a member of the species, the Homo sapiens, and it goes on and on. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't matter that I know my Catholic faith says it begins at conception and life ends at natural death. But what I'd like to do is this. And we said there are both sides to the issues here, there's no doubt, and as someone stated, and there are people in the gray areas. And I think it's important to know and important to inform people, because sometimes we're saying the word abortion and we're using it as someone's taking their tonsils out. And I think it's important that everybody knows exactly what happens during an abortion procedure at different times of a woman's pregnancy. Between 6 and 14 weeks of a woman's pregnancy, this is the most common surgical abortion procedure because the fetus is larger. The doctor must first stretch open the cervix using metal rods. Opening the cervix may be painful, so local or general anesthesia is typically needed. After the cervix is stretched open, the doctor inserts a hard plastic tube into the uterus, then connects this tube to a suction machine. The suction pulls the fetus body apart and out of the uterus. The doctor may also use a loop-shaped knife called a curette to scrape the fetus and fetal parts out of the uterus. Now, between 13 and 24 weeks is called dilation and evacuation, which is legal here in Pennsylvania. The surgical abortion is done during the second trimester of pregnancy. At this point in pregnancy, the fetus is too large to be broken up by suction alone and will not pass through the suction tubing. In this procedure, the cervix must be opened wider than in the first trimester abortion. This is done by inserting numerous thin rods made of seaweed a day or two before the abortion. Once the cervix is stretched open, the doctor pulls out the fetal parts with forceps. The fetus skull is crushed to ease removal. The sharp tool, the curette, is also used to scrape out any removing parts. Now, this one is from 20 weeks to full term, which is legal, which Planned Parenthood and others fight for this right of over 20 weeks to perform an abortion. This procedure takes 3 days. During the first 2 days, the cervix is stretched open using thin rods, and medication is given for pain. On the third day, the abortion doctor uses ultrasound to locate the legs of the fetus. Grasping a leg with forceps, the doctor delivers the fetus up to the head. Next, scissors are inserted into the base of the skull to create an opening. A suction catheter is placed into the opening to remove the brain. The skull collapses and the fetus is removed. This, to me, does not sound like women's health or reproductive rights. This, to me, sounds like taking of a human life and killing of a baby who has no right and no one to speak for them. I pray this resolution does not pass. Thank you.
My name is Frank McCarron. I live in Delancey Court. My wife could not be here. She decided to open up a house we have in South Carolina for some friends from Sarasota, and so she went down to do that. Of course, the storm now has changed paths and is heading for our house in South Carolina. So, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, my wife's name is Elaine McCarron, and she wanted me to say the following. I absolutely support a woman's right to choose. I am old enough to remember the severe effects on women of all age groups who suffered medically and emotionally when lacking that right. And after having that right to choose for 50 years, I do not condone a subset of people with strong religious views taking away that right which women have fought for. On a personal note, I had friends in my teenage years that lacked the emotional strength to say no to men and who faced unintended pregnancies. One of my teenage friends had a severe cardiac issue, but chose nevertheless to have the baby. She died a month after childbirth. As sad as her death was, her decision to give birth was still her choice. She had the right to choose to give birth, even though she might die, while on the other hand, there were no consequences for her boyfriend who knew she had a cardiac condition. My friend's parents raised the child. I also had a friend who was raped and became pregnant and chose not to have that child. No woman who is forced upon by a man should be additionally forced upon by society to give birth to a rapist child. A pregnant woman carries a fetus, not an unborn child. An unintended pregnancy should be viewed as a medical condition that can be avoided with medications both before and after conception. I have a number of friends who are doctors, and not one of them are opposed to a woman's right to make her own decision regarding her body. Other countries are moving forward and getting it right, while we have moved backwards a half century because of religious preferences. So it doesn't matter how many people are in this room or how passionate they may be. Their views do not reflect the majority view regarding women's rights. My family and friends across religions and racial lines firmly support a woman's right to choose, and I hope that the Board of Supervisors will defend a woman's reproductive rights by supporting this resolution. I'd also like to say, for those who have objected to the board even considering this matter, this board in 2020 passed unanimously a Love is Love resolution in support of LGBTQ rights of the youth in this township. So I believe it is within the purview of you as a Board of Supervisor to look out as you see fit for the residents of this township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Colleen Campbell-Miller from neighboring Lower Makefield Township. And, I just wanted to say that this symbolic gesture that you're making, it's not going to change abortion. You're still going to be able in Pennsylvania to have abortion up to 24 weeks. It doesn't change that, but it's just you're speaking for us. And there's a lot of passion in this room, which is great on both sides. And we can call and we can write our elected officials and we can vote on the issues. And I think that you on the board are very passionate. And you can do the same thing that we can as citizens of Pennsylvania. I don't think that you need to use your platform to go ahead and put forth an opinion that maybe doesn't reflect everyone's opinion. We need the Board of Supervisors to do what is in their mission statement. And in your mission statement, it's dedicated to excellence in providing prompt, appropriate public services to citizens and property, which I'm sure you're doing. I mean, Newtown is a lovely place. And also it goes on to say that you're encouraging honest, value-driven, responsive, sensitive, respectful activities in the service of the community. I think that this resolution is only divisive. It's causing upsetment between the residents. I don't think it's doing what you want it to do. Let the residents speak for themselves. Let us vote and let us do what we need to. We don't need you to We need you to be part. We need you to uphold your mission statement to provide prompt, appropriate public services. We don't need you to speak for us on the federal and state level. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Phillips, and I'm from Upper Makefield. I do spend a lot of time in Newtown. I have lived here, I have worked here, and I do worship here, and my kids have been educated here. So, you know, we are one community for sure, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak. The first thing I wanted to start off with was the actual construct of the resolution, because I'm told that this resolution was drafted to represent the views of Newtown Township. Can I approach the board? May I approach the board?
For what reason?
I have some documents I'd like you to show you.
Okay. You can hand them to
Oh,
our
yes. So
assistant manager.
This is the resolution that's pending for Newtown Township. There's a camera right there.
We have the...
Yes.
So you've got to stay at the microphone so we can hear you in the public.
And then I also would like to show the identical referendum from West Whiteland Township in Chester County, Pennsylvania. It's identically written, and West Whiteland Township passed this referendum on August 10th. I'd also present that to the board. An identical referendum from Upper Darby Township, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, identically written, every single whereas. This was passed on August 10th. Present that to the board. Jenkintown Borough, I wasn't able to get that. They passed a document titled The Commitment to Support of Reproductive Rights, which is the same title as this referendum, on July 27th. So my question, and I'll yield the floor, is are we representing the citizens of Newtown Township and surrounding areas, or are we representing Upper Darby or West Whiteland Township or Jenkintown Borough? And I'll yield the floor if you'd like to answer, but otherwise I'll just continue. Another question is perhaps a referendum was produced and passed down through the chain. I don't know. Moving on. Just a couple of thoughts on the rights we're talking about. We speak about women's rights and well, I've noticed as I've counted the speakers that an awful lot of women are speaking, and they seem to be awfully opposed to abortion. In addition, unfortunately, legalized abortion throughout the world has led to one thing I think would be a clear violation of women's rights, which is sex-selective abortion in parts of the world, which clearly disadvantages baby girls. So I just wonder what your thoughts, if you're for women's rights, how do we prevent that type of violation? Can we protect women's rights in that case? The right to bodily autonomy. I understand this right, and I think it falls into the right of or the question of when human life begins. And I understand there are different viewpoints on when human life begins. But if it's not a human life prior to birth, then what exactly is it? And these are really important questions because, and I asked the board and I asked particularly Ms. Snyder, because you said at the last meeting, you said something that if you can say that a collection of cells has a consciousness or feels pain, it's simply not scientifically true. Well, that may be the case. I don't believe so. I mean, I look at the science and I don't see that. But are you claiming that this baby is not a human being worthy of any rights at all? And can the mother do anything she wants with it? I think that's a very important question because it's been clearly documented that a company called Planned Parenthood has been found to be selling aborted baby body parts for profit. And so if you claim it's not a human life, is it worthy to prevent that from happening? In fact, our own University of Pittsburgh has been found to be acquiring those body parts and conducting experiments with them. So clearly there is a consumer market, a lucrative consumer market for these body parts, okay? Maybe it's not a life, but is it something that's worthy of protection? So following the logic that I hear about the right to bodily autonomy, does it follow that if a woman is perfectly within her rights to claim bodily autonomy to that baby growing in in her uterus, does she have the right to sell that child? Does she have the right to get intentionally pregnant and then sell that child? I mean, we're talking about extremes here, but my gosh, there's a consumer market for these body parts. Just some things to think about. And lastly, do you think that this whole concept of a consumer market for aborted baby body parts and experimentation on fetal body parts, do you think that is empowering women who are bearing these babies, these fetuses, these clumps of cells that you call, do you think that's empowering women? I just feel like we've been going down a very slippery slope, and I understand and I appreciate the fact that sex has always been, and temptation has always been, and unplanned pregnancies have always been. But I also see a real slippery slope here, and I think you see it too. I think I see a slippery slope that I personally am a victim of, and I think a lot of men and women here, and it was the sexual revolution, right? I mean, we were told as young men and women that you could have sex without consequences because you had contraception, right? I mean, that was what we were told, and some of us tried it out, and we learned, you know what? Maybe it was fun, but there were consequences. There were true emotional consequences, and there were consequences to the people that we used and the people that we hurt, and in fact, we hurt ourselves too. You know, we talk about empowering women and women's rights. I speak to some young boys in my activities, clubs and ministries around the area, and they share with me some of the locker room chatter. Okay, and I remember this from when I was a young man as well. I'm not proud of it. But they speak of their sexual prowess and conquest with women as what's the term? Body counts. Like, what was your body count this weekend? Folks, we've gone down the slippery slope. I mean, if we want to empower women, we need to treat each other. Men need to treat women, and women need to treat men with dignity. And I know we're not going to solve this tonight. But I would say that the fact that there was a push for unlimited abortion without any consequences, there was a push for contraception freely given, it has consequences. And this is all a huge and massively complicated thing. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak tonight. I mean, we're so blessed that we have free will to be able to think and exchange ideas. What a blessing. But it's a huge thing. Lastly, just because I think on a bigger scale, I've seen so many changes over the last few decades. My gosh, I had a discussion with my dad, and he used to drive around when he was a kid in a convertible with the top down. I mean, he was a smooth operator, and he told me when he was married, he was a virgin. Like, that was the good culture that he grew up in. Like, you treat a woman right. That's not the culture that was given to me. That was not the culture that we'll get there. That's not the culture that MTV taught me. That's not the culture that James Bond and how many women was he going to have this movie? That was not the culture that was given to me, and that's not the culture we're giving to our kids, I'm finding. I'm having a hard time teaching my kids about the dignity of relationships and respecting. Last thing. Because when human life begins is going to be very important. Here's a headline from a recent MIT technology review. Quote, "This startup wants to copy you into an embryo for organ harvesting. With plans to create realistic synthetic embryos grown in jars, the company Renewal Bio is working with stem cell technology and artificial wombs. They start with mouse stem cells, and then in the lab, they form mouse embryos and keep them growing in a mechanical womb for several days until they develop beating hearts, flowing blood, and brain matter." I don't know if you folks can see this, but we're years away from that being done with human cells, with a human embryo. I graduated from MIT. The only reason I mention that is because I think you can trust me when I say I've been around some really intelligent people. But I also learned that intelligence without virtue is really dangerous. It's really dangerous. Intelligence and science are great, but they're not to be worshipped. Intelligence and virtue, and there are a lot of smart people out there doing a lot of incredible things, and I worry that they don't have the virtues to see the human dignity. It's cloning human beings. You know, then we're going to have to decide what is life? What is it? And so, I don't know. The one thing with the resolutions, the 3 resolutions I showed from the other towns, I'm not asking you to plant my cultural flag in the middle of Newtown, and I'm not going to ask Upper Makefield to do that. Let's just take the flags down. Get back to where we were. Thank you for listening.
John Scariano, 35-year resident of Newtown. I was here the last meeting. I'm happy that there's opposing points of view, but I can't wrap my arms around the fact that a series of cells is not a life, but without those series of cells, you can't get to the end result of life. So that is conception, that is life. I don't understand how you can disconnect the two. This meeting should prove one thing. It doesn't belong here. It belongs in the ballot box. We have people here that are small group of people who represent a much larger area. I don't know why you would bring a resolution to the floor. That has nothing to do, again, with anything that you do for your job. It has nothing. It's your opinion. It's what you think. And you're right to your opinion. Even if it's wrong, you're right to your opinion. Okay? But it's not my opinion, and we are all in this room, and we're all trying to play, the opposing side is trying to play God. We are given the ability to conceive, women are given the ability to have children. The one thing nobody is talking about, they're talking about, which is a fact, the incest and the other aspects of unwanted pregnancies. Nobody's talking about the morality. Nobody's talking about, let's put something forth to try to build family, bring back the family structure so these things don't happen. Because you can stand outside of an abortion clinic, and I've done it many times, and there are kids out there, kids, on cell phones while these girls are inside getting an abortion. Now, do you think they've been educated on the reality of life? Do you think that that's fair, that's good for them? You don't talk about morality. It's a shiny ball in the room because it's election time. That's what this is. But more than that, it's life. It's life and it's death. I'm a parishioner of St. Andrew's. I identify as a proud Roman Catholic, okay? And I am so against this resolution. Again, I ask you respectfully to just take it away, be done with it. It doesn't belong here. Life is life. Thank God God gives us that ability. Let's live. And this shouldn't be here. Deal with business as you should, but not this. It's not your call to put a resolution up to keep this going. It's not your call. It's your opinion. Thank you.
Hi.
Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Laura Reeder, Tyler Walk, Newtown Township. I was here last week, I spoke. I want to address the comment about the heart beating at 11 weeks, actually 2 weeks ago. I know for a fact that's not true. Can you hear me okay? Okay. When I was 6 weeks pregnant with my son, I had to have an ultrasound, and I saw his heart beating at 6 weeks. This, and you probably can't see this, but this is the size of a baby at 6 weeks. Very, very tiny, yet his heart was beating. Okay? Science has proven that it starts even sooner. The University of Oxford published an article in October of 2016. The first of our 3 billion heartbeats is sooner than we thought. Until now, researchers thought that the first time our heart muscle contracted to beat was at 8 days after conception in mice, which equates to around day 21 of a human pregnancy. A team funded by the British Heart Foundation at the University of Oxford has demonstrated earlier beating of the heart in mouse embryos, which, if extrapolated to the human heart, suggests beating as early as 16 days after conception. In the study published in the journal eLife, researchers looked at the developing mouse heart and found that the muscle started to contract as soon as it formed the cardiac crescent, an early stage in heart development. In mice, this crescent forms 7.5 days after conception, which is equivalent to day 16 in the human embryo. The heart is the first organ to form during pregnancy and is critical in providing oxygen and nutrients to the developing embryo. The process of heart development is highly conserved between mammalian species, meaning that these findings may add considerably to our understanding of how the human heart develops. Okay. There's also an article from the Lozier Institute, I believe they're in North Carolina. Yeah, Charlotte. So highlights of the early heart. When does the heart start beating in pregnancy? The heart starts beating 22 days after conception. By 24 days, the heartbeat can be measured using transvaginal ultrasound technology in most viable pregnancies. The heart starts as 2 tubes which fuse together and fold during the 4th week, forming an S-curve. In the 5th week, 2 sections become the atria, and in the 6th week, the ventricles form. The heart reaches its final shape by the 8th week with 2 atria, 2 ventricles, and circulatory blood vessels. And this one is also from the Lozier Institute, The Science Behind Embryonic Heartbeats, a fact sheet. There is a functional beating heart in every human being by 6 weeks of gestation. The heart is the embryo's first functioning organ, which starts to develop as early as 16 days after fertilization. The first heartbeat occurs approximately day 22 to 23 after fertilization, which is the 6th week of gestation in pregnancy. They also state the embryonic heartbeat can be detected as early as the 6th week of gestation. At 6 weeks gestation, the heartbeat can be detected via a transvaginal ultrasound. At 6 weeks, the embryo's heart is beating rhythmically, and the heart can be easily identified. Its image has been captured for viewers to see. Researchers have found that the presence of a heartbeat at 6 to 8 weeks indicates that the baby has a very high chance of surviving at childbirth. There are also different images of the heart at the different stages in development. So it does beat much sooner than the 11 weeks that was spoken of 2 weeks ago. So this, I'm just kind of giving you an estimate of the size. This is a baby at 8 weeks. Okay, this is the size. So you can, it still has a body, okay, but you can see that the heart is definitely beating right before that date. Okay, this one is about 12 weeks. Okay, this baby has a body at 12 weeks. They have a body sooner than this, but this is 12 weeks. This is 16 weeks. Baby still has a body, just a little bigger. This is a baby at 20 weeks. Baby still has a body, just getting bigger. Just keep growing. So we keep hearing about choices. What about the baby's choice? The baby has a body, but the baby doesn't have a voice. What about the baby's choice? The baby didn't ask to be conceived. The baby was conceived by the choice of the parents. Why should the baby have to suffer because of the choice of the parents? The baby has a body. The baby should have a choice too. Baby is not given a choice. The baby has the right to life. As stated earlier, in this country we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The baby has a right to life. Okay? Women do have choices. I'm a woman, I have choices. I can have the baby, I can give the baby up for adoption, I can abstain from sexual relationships. Okay? Those are the choices. Those are good moral choices. I would like to ask that you do not adopt this resolution. This is really not in your purview to do. This is not what you were elected to do for our township. Okay? I ask that you please stay in your lane and do not pursue this. Thank you very much.
I'm Dan Tarrant. I was privileged to speak here last time, and I'll be brief. I do live in Newtown. I'm a resident. I live behind Goodnoe Elementary at 3 Remy Place. I work on staff at St. Andrews. I'm the director of family ministries at St. Andrews, so my job is to interact with families with children from first through 14th grade over at Bucks County Community College as well, and just be a blessing to their families and help them make good family decisions. To have a faith that lasts a lifetime is our motto of our ministry, of the family ministries. I would just like to ask, I think you guys are extraordinary. All of you, and I don't agree with all of you, but I really would like to ask us, and just take a second before you decide whether to do this, but I would like to give the board a round of applause for hearing us out. I think this is what our community needs. I know we could talk about America and what everybody needs. All we really have control of is right here. I really think that these guys deserve a round of applause for just hearing us out, no matter how they vote. As a Catholic, there's a principle I live by. It's a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas, and he said, "Let us learn to love both those with whom we agree and those with whom we disagree, because both have labored alongside of us in the search for the truth." And I just think you've done that, and I think you deserve a round of applause for that. I really do, and so I'm glad the group here gave that to you. I do think it's not appropriate for us to vote on this. I do think it's outside your purview, and that really is my struggle, because I think it creates division in our community. I think you're hurting our community by even having this conversation here. I mean, I remember a time, Phil, when you were my neighbor, and I could decide whether to vote for you or not based on none of this. None of this. And there was such an innocence in that. And I could have a conversation with you. We could talk about local issues. And I wouldn't have to bring these things up, or I wouldn't have to even think on them. And you saw my children when they came home from Uganda. You've met Noah. And now I'm sitting here saying, like, I wasn't planning on speaking, because I just wanted to help Laura, because I know her, and she's a member of our church and has children who we've ministered to. But like, I look at this, and I listen to what Deacon Steve Javi said, and he described that. Well, my son Noah, I said this in a veiled way, but I'll just be very direct. His mom went to abort him at 8 months. And it was only because the state law forbade that my son Noah, your Newtown resident, is alive. And we received him at birth. And those of you who've heard me speak at church, it's very clear to me that God led me to Noah. If you want to hear the 20-minute story, watch some video I've made or come to a church talk. But if there's a God out there, I can't deny that something was going on there. There was some plan before he was formed in that womb and while he was in the womb. But I know this isn't a religious debate. But as I'm looking at this, it's like, when did Noah get rights? Like, did he have rights here? If he didn't have some kind of right at 8 months, he's dead. Like, Did he have rights here? 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 When did he become an American? And those are the questions you're asking, and I don't hear great answers on those. And then when I heard Mr. Mike Phillips explain that this is just a boilerplate copy of somebody else's resolution and how many other townships, it's like, are we even thinking about what we're saying? Like I heard, and you have been so gracious as a board to interact with me and email with me, like really praise God for you guys. I think that you are doing great, and just keep having those lines of communication however you vote. But like, I don't know if we're having a serious conversation about this. I don't. When I think we've spent more time talking about this here because of public comments than was spent writing that, if it's just a copy and paste. So maybe, and that's not a judgment or a condemnation, because I really think you're good people trying to do good things, but maybe that's a demonstration that that this kind of a branch of government is not equipped for these conversations. And if we try to take them on, we're going to hurt our town. Like I have all these Catholic families that I lead. How you vote tonight might alienate them. And we have Jewish brothers and sisters here. How you vote tonight might alienate them. And the thing that stuns me is that we don't have to do that. Like, there's no reason to alienate anybody on this issue because our vote on this has no impact anyway. So what are we doing? Like, we're just wrecking Newtown, the place where I live and serve and plan to live my whole life. And I don't want to have to ask you, Phil, to make a definitive statement on when Noah got rights, if it was here, or John and Naya. John and Naya, I'll just say it very directly, I've been to Uganda. We just filmed a documentary there. You want to talk about sexual abuse and child trafficking and crazy off-the-rails stuff? Holy Hannah. The odds of an unborn, of a child who does not have parents and is put up it's not even for adoption, just dumped off at a place where a bunch of nuns will take care of them. There is no abortion there. I would say the odds are probably like 50-50 that any unwanted child there was probably the product of rape or incest. I mean, I just filmed a documentary and met all these kids weeping. So did John and Naya not have rights? When I came home from America? Like, when did their rights start? And like that's hard. Those are big questions. I think those just might be bigger questions than we're equipped to have, and that it's good for us to have. Like, Phil, I want to vote for you because I think you just care about Newtown. I don't want to have to ask you when you think life definitively began. And I think it's so liberating that I don't have to ask you that. But if you adopt this resolution or go forward with it and don't table it indefinitely, then all of a sudden everyone in Newtown now has to start asking on local elections, when do you definitively think life began? And is that good for us? You know, and is that what you were elected to do? And is that going to be good for the people I serve at St. Andrews? I don't even know if it's good for no matter how you vote, I don't know if it's good for the Jewish community, because now you know what you're doing? Now you're pointing out differences between the Catholic community and the Jewish community. For what reason? Do we need more division from our Jewish brothers and sisters? Like, I think that we're just not equipped to have this conversation, and I think we're going to harm our community if we try to. And then when I think that this could be a boilerplate resolution, I say to myself, we're not equipped to have this conversation. So I would suggest just tabling it indefinitely and not picking a side, and let's just let Newtown have that innocence. Because I really do think you're good people. I really do. I'm not like saying that out of an article of religious faith, although that is an article of religious faith for me too. I think you're really good people. Dennis, you've been awesome. You've listened to these long emails from me, watched a video that I made that went on Catholic TV. You guys are great. But I think for us to continue to be great, it's just to put this aside. And don't put me opposed to our brothers and sisters in the Jewish community because I'm a leader in the Catholic community. Like, don't do that to us. Like, we're better and bigger than that. That's all.
Have you spoken already tonight?
Last week I did.
Okay, all right. You're on.
All right, I spoke last week. My name is John Griffin. I'm from Providence Court in Newtown. And I'm not going to go over the same things I said last week. What I'd like to address is some new things that have come forward. Some of the comments made by Philip and Ellen last week, I'd like to address those. And I'd like to address this resolution to start with. This resolution, first of all, we found out that it's been copied and used at different townships. This is concerning to me. This was supposed to be representing Newtown Township. I thought it was specific and generated by Ellen or someone, one of the board supervisors, out of the township. It looks to me that this has been generated by a political agenda. Multiple townships are adopting the same identical resolution. This isn't specific to Newtown Township. This is specific to some agenda. I suspect the Democratic Party. I don't know. And since we can't go back and forth, you can't answer that question. But the fact that there's an identical resolution passed by 3 different townships or so, and maybe many more, leads me to question, are you representing Newtown Township, or are you representing some higher power? And that's concerning to me. Number 2, we constantly are forgetting the child in a lot of these conversations. Yes, women have rights, men have, everybody has rights. It's all about our rights. How about our responsibilities? How about the child in the womb that doesn't have the voice? We cannot forget the child in the womb. We talked about Wawa last week and whether or not we need a Wawa or whether we need more development in this community. And I'm sure all of you supervisors did your due diligence. I'll just ask you, did you go to the site where Wawa is going to be built? Did you drive out there, check out the site, look at the traffic patterns, get a lot of data, do a little research? I'm sure you did. You did your homework. Well, I'm asking you now, have you watched an abortion? Have you seen a video of an abortion? We've had them described tonight. We've seen young babies in the womb at different stages of development. But you're voting on having an abortion. You're voting and saying, let's go, Newtown Township is behind this. Have you seen an abortion? Have you looked at it? I ask you that if you're going to vote on something like this, you got to own it. You own it and look at that abortion. Look at it, view it. See a baby's legs pulled apart. See the baby's brain sucked out of their head. See the snipping like happened in the Gosnell down in Philadelphia, the snipping of its neck. That's what we're talking about. Philip, you said, I don't think anyone wants to make the statement that they are, at least myself, I can't speak for anyone else, in parentheses, abortion. You're saying I don't think anyone wants to make the statement that they are for abortion. I don't like the word abortion, but I like the term pro-choice. And I think a woman has a right to a choice. Isn't it amazing? You want to get away from the word abortion. Yeah, you want to soften it, pro-choice, like we're picking out an ice cream flavor. We're picking out a choice of life or death. That's what abortion is. That's why we soften it with pro-choice. We don't say pro-abortion. We say pro-choice. Everybody's for choice. I don't know if I want a Chevy or a Ford. I want a choice. But when you're talking about the choice being the life of a baby in the womb, that's something different. That's called abortion. And I believe you should, each and every one of you, watch an abortion and then come back and say that you can be so gung-ho on a resolution that's being passed around this state. We're forgetting, again, and just hear me out with this logic. Imagine somebody 150 years ago saying, I personally am against slavery. I'm against it. But I'm pro-choice. If someone wants to have a slave, then they can have a slave. That's up to them. Well, who are we forgetting in this equation? Who doesn't have a choice in that equation? the slave. We have brought down their humanity. We have said they don't have a voice. We're forgetting the humanity of the baby. We're forgetting the humanity of the slave. And by the way, somebody brought this up. That's what they did in the Nuremberg laws. Research the history. When Germany came in, Germany was an educated community across the board. And what did they do to the Jewish population? They changed the laws. They lowered their humanity. They said they're not part of the super race. They said they're subhuman. Well, we're saying babies are subhuman. Once we come to the point that we acknowledge that it's human life, we've got to protect it because we're supposed to have the right to life. You tell us you want us to decide on, this is your quote, Philip. You tell us you want us to decide on zoning, which we do. Well, guess what? That's all based on our personal opinion, too. So you're saying we can't have a personal opinion on this. This is you saying this. We can't have a personal on this issue because it goes up the national chain. But when I give you my personal opinion about Wawa or Toll Brothers, that's still my personal opinion. We constantly go back and forth over this. It's real simple. We want your opinion, Philip. And many people have respected your opinion on zoning and so forth. But we want your opinions on municipal issues. This is outside your purview, and you were not elected to deal with these issues. Quite frankly, I would have never thought, I'm pro-life, adamantly. Dennis, you and I have been across the aisle at the polls talking, respectfully, okay? And you know I'm pro-life, and I know where you stood. But I never thought that a pro-life issue would come before this board. I never thought. So in the future, as some others have said, we're going to have to consider now where you stand on all this myriad of social issues, rather than just whether or not you want the zoning. I want to know your opinion about the Wawa. That I want to know about, but not really about abortion, because it's not in your purview. Ellen said last week, a heartbeat is not detectable until 11 weeks. If you can say that a collection of cells has a consciousness or feels pain, it is simply not scientifically true. Well, the fact of the matter is, there's been studies done that they can feel pain at 12 weeks. And it was done by a pro-abortion and a pro-life, and it's a medical ethic journal. You can look it up. My point saying is, here you are, Ellen, saying they can't feel pain up until 11 weeks. Yet, the very motion that you had said you want to support the laws of abortion in Pennsylvania now, as they are today, you said. Well, guess what? Those rules, a woman can have an abortion at 24 weeks in this state. Well, that's after the baby can feel pain. So where is the sympathy? Where is the compassion? Where is the caring for the baby in the womb that doesn't get anesthesia? Imagine this now. The only procedure that they don't administer anesthesia to the baby in the womb is when they're aborting the baby. If you go in for prenatal care, the doctor administers anesthesia. But when they go in for an abortion, when the baby can feel pain and they're aborting the baby, they don't even give anesthesia to the baby. So they can feel pain. And by the way, that collection of cells, a single cell embryo has a unique genetic code, and it will never again be repeated. Never again. That genetic code. And I sympathize with you, Ellen. You mentioned you had miscarriages. My wife and I had a couple ourselves. I know that the pain of that. My wife experienced the pain of that. But what gives us hope is the fact that we know that a soul was created with specific genetic code that will live forever. And we'll meet that child someday, those children someday. So we have to respect that. Another quote from Ellen. By the way, how do I know that people agree with me? Well, I knock on doors. Issue-based door knocking. And the issue we've been knocking on is women's right to bodily autonomy. And again, I'm so tired of hearing this. We want bodily autonomy for a woman. And we want bodily autonomy for the baby in the womb. There's three people in a relationship that cause a baby. You have the baby, they want bodily autonomy. That baby will fight. That baby will fight for its life if you'll let it. So we constantly see bodily autonomy as if the baby's not there. Again, forgetting the child. And overwhelmingly, there has not been one, this is Ellen's words, overwhelmingly, there has not been one person that has disagreed with the fact that we should have these rights. I got to say, I find that almost impossible to believe. I don't know whose door you're knocking on, but please knock on mine. We'll have coffee. I have no problem. Please come down. I can fill my house. I just heard about this about 2 weeks ago. I think I heard about this on a Sunday, and we had 600 names immediately. Boom. You think that was no big deal? Boom, 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 boom. You have 600 names of people that are against this resolution. So I don't know whose doors you're knocking on, but I invite all of you, come on up, 21 Providence Court. Knock on my door. Okay? But 600 names was a piece of cake. Lastly, we have well, first of all, one last thing. On this resolution that we came up with, the resolution that multiple townships are using, it says, I quote, whereas the township supports codifying the right to an abortion into federal law. Whereas the township supports codifying the right to an abortion into federal law. Ellen, when you brought this up originally, I looked it up on the agenda. You said that this resolution was only to support current Pennsylvania law as it exists today. That's not even what this resolution says. Go back on your website. Check out what you said. You said, I'm only supporting current Pennsylvania law as it exists today. This resolution says the township supports codifying the right to an abortion into federal law. That's not what it says in the Pennsylvania law today. This is an expansion of abortion. Lastly, we have a thing in this country called guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Innocent, you have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, come on, guys. We let go OJ, okay? We let him out because there was a reasonable doubt. We have put forth enough arguments here tonight about I believe a child is born at the moment of conception. That's when life begins. But there's different varying degrees. Obviously, there are doubts in everyone's minds here. Even those that say it's 11 weeks, it's when a breath first is taken, our Jewish brothers, etc. There's doubts in this. There's reasonable doubts. And we are giving the baby, if we get this wrong, the death penalty. We are giving the baby the death penalty if we get this wrong. I say we should give the baby the benefit of the doubt and not pass this resolution. Thank you.
I'm afraid my guide dog Twain thinks the applause is for him. I'm Terry Christensen. I live at 67 Kirkwood Drive. I've heard a lot. I spoke last week. I'm sorry for some of you. I jumped the line. It seemed to me the man immediately behind me had spoken earlier this evening, and I just feel like I need to speak. I hadn't intended to speak this evening. One thing that struck me in the dialogue early on was someone suggested that Mr. Calabro, because he's male, should recuse himself from this vote, and I think that's a fine idea if all the males on the board recuse themselves from this vote. It's not getting the laughter I expected, sorry. So, the issue, it seems to me, is not about when life starts, it's when personhood starts. And a number of people here have talked about the rights, when the rights of the fetus begin. I'm wondering when the rights of the woman end. When do those rights get terminated? The other thing that bothers me about this is the sense that all that life, well, let me back up. when people have trouble conceiving and they try in vitro fertilization, it's not unusual to have multiple pregnancies. Are people suggesting that a woman endanger her own life and the life of those by trying to carry 8 or 10 or 12 fertilized fetuses? That doesn't make sense to me. I'm wondering also about, there are people here who've given us very graphic descriptions of what happens in an abortion. As I said last week, there was abortion long before Roe v. Wade, and there will be abortion if this is overturned. The question is it going to be safe? And if you want to talk about in very graphic detail what happens when an abortion happens, then talk about what happens when an illegal one happens. Have that kind of graphic discussion, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. All the rules in the world. The last thing I want to say is, we keep hearing, I've heard a number of times this like that, this is outside your purview. This is beyond anything you do. Wise man once said, all politics is local. But if it's outside your purview, if that's what we really believe, then why do we pledge allegiance to a national flag? This township did not decide to go to war, but we honor our veterans. This township was not attacked on 9/11, but we honor the first responders. We had a celebration of that just last week. This is a bigger issue. All politics are local. And I will finish with this. I've heard some people say that this is too divisive. Maybe. I'd encourage you to read Reverend Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. The people he was writing to were not the segregationists. The people he was writing to were other ministers who were saying to him, slow down, slow down. This is too divisive. This is going too fast. Wait, slow down. You'll get your rights eventually. We promise. It's only taken us a couple hundred years, but we'll get around to it. No. The time to stand for freedom is now. Thank you. And thank you for your service.
I'm just going to speak real quick,
Yeah,
just because you're talking about my child.
Dan, real
hold
quick,
on. Yeah.
please. I want to set a boundary here.
You could put a timer on me for 60 seconds. I mean it.
Okay, 60 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead. It's hard for me. So my children are African American, and you quoted a pro-life African American pastor who would disagree with the way he used his phrase. Albert Einstein once said the only people he dislikes are the people who use his science to say there's no God. We just keep warping things. I just think it really is beyond our scope. I also wanted to say, and it's just because I said it on public record, my son Noah, his birth mom is awesome. And I want to be very clear with that. And if my son ever watches this one day, I want him to hear that his birth mom is awesome. And she initially made a decision that I don't think was in his best interests, but the PA government was there to help her to make a decision that was in his best interests. And when she handed her child to me, I wept and she wept. And I exchanged my rosary for her child, and I told her we are here to honor you and to raise this child in a way that blesses you, and we're here to serve you. And I just wanted to be sure I finished my story, because God bless my son Noah if he ever sees this one day, because I didn't want to share any of it, but I felt it was important because we have to avoid this division.
Okay.
So please don't vote on this.
Hi, Scott McFarland, 7 Daffodil Place, Newtown, Grant. I'd like to expound on a prior resident addressing the exact outline of the resolution being passed in several towns and cities across the country. That's step one. Is step two the same towns funneling their American Rescue Plan funds into local abortion centers? That is going on around the country, and I'm very curious. You're laughing. Am I way off base with that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's great news. Second thing. I've told my kids this growing up, and I'll say it now. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think that applies here. Lastly, are you sure this is the hill you want to die on? Because clearly, there's a division throughout the township, and Dan said it, Steve said it. I don't think we should pass this resolution for both sides. Doesn't need to be done. Thanks.
Before we go too much further, there's a number of us in the back, up here that need a break. And it looks like the line's getting longer. So why don't we just take the break now and come back? And those who have talked already, I am going to put that 1 minute proviso on that. So have a 5-minute break. let us please come back to order, please. Okay, if we come back to order, I see we have a couple of speakers in line. Let me just let you know that after this, we have 2 letters to read, and they came in during the meeting tonight. And we'll go back to the public comment.
Thanks.
And again, if you've spoken already, we're going to hold you to a 1 minute.
Thank
Go
you.
on, sir.
Thanks giving the opportunity for a break. My name is Frank Franzonia. I've only lived in the township a year and a half, but I already know it's a great place to live. Imagine a Newtown farmer who goes and plants corn seed. A few weeks later, seedlings appear, but he mistakes them for weeds, promptly gets on his tractor and plows under all he has sowed. I know these are not the kind of land use questions that come under the jurisdiction of your Board of Supervisors, but if it did, I imagine you might even revoke that farmer's license. The fact is that life, whether human or that of a corn plant, involves a continuous process that we intrude on by making unscientific presumptions. If, as one board member contends, the fetus in the earliest stages is simply a blob of cells, at least pause and consider the fact that this applied to every one of you here tonight at some stage in your own development. More important to keep in mind and more accurate to maintain is that no person can claim responsibility for his or her own existence. Surely that ought to give us pause. And it ought to make any government body exercise extreme caution in claiming authority when it comes to weighing in on the origins of human life. What we know scientifically about conception, when sperm and egg unite, and the rapid developments afterward, are putting more people in the pro-science camp, coming to the rational conclusion that the fetus is a developing human being and not simply some collection of cells with a potential for life. Just a few facts to consider, and I'm repeating some of the other speakers. Day 7, the tiny human attaches to the mother's uterus. Week 3, a heart begins to beat. The same week, the fetus begins to pump its own blood. Week 9, squints, swallows, moves tongue, makes fist. And week 21, when the youngest premature baby to survive outside the womb was born. But what accounts for all this amazing development? It's quite simply the moment of conception, the split second that makes each one of us unique, distinguishing us from the 7 billion other people on the planet. When DNA from the mother and father bond, that begins the life story for you and me. That's when the book of life opens. After that, the one cell will differentiate into the 40 trillion cells of an adult over time. But all the DNA carrying cells hold exact copies of that first single cell, which contains the blueprint of who we are. Have you ever requested an analysis from 23andMe or Ancestry.com? It works precisely because these companies are able to analyze your unique DNA and so distinguish you from 7 billion others. But the biggest takeaway for our purposes is the fact that all such scientific study supports the fact that no matter how long or short you live after conception, there will never ever be another you.
Probably not going to use the mic because I have a pretty loud mouth. But the bottom line is, my name is Dr. Joseph B. Downey. I just want to let everyone here, I've sat in your position. I'm a former mayor. And I told you last week I was a Democrat. But you know, I'm not going to speak on any religious viewpoint right now. First of all, because I understand both sides. I was mentored by Jews up until I was 16, 17, 18 years old. I did every Jewish appeal my brother did. We dedicated our lives to the Jewish faith. I didn't know whether I was a Jew or a Christian. And I can tell you, all Jews do not agree with first breath and last breath. That is a major fact. I wanted to clarify that for the audience. What I want to say is that look at this audience.
Excuse me, sir.
Please use the
Excuse me,
microphone and
sir.
address.
Please use the microphone and address the board.
address the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Look at your audience. Your audience is your mandate. This is your town. And they're on both sides. They're on both sides. This is unique because, it's unique to America. We should be proud of it. We should absolutely be proud of what's happening tonight, even though we don't agree with it. We can agree to disagree. That's a good thing. But what you've done, the cardinal sin here, is that you have town people now pitted against town people who really want to care about each other. They know each other. They've already said it. You've heard it in the speeches. We've heard all the doctrines. We've heard all the science. We've heard it from every single side. Nothing's going to be decided. And I will tell you, whatever resolution you make is a moot point. Because Pennsylvania law supersedes anything you do here. And you guys know that. Your solicitor should verify that. It supersedes whatever you're going to make here. So why the resolution? The jam ideology or down somebody's throat? Because it may be yours. And if you weren't sitting there and somebody else was, they could jam theirs down your throat. How would you feel about that? I don't think you would feel nice. So what I'm saying, if you want to take the high road, and this is not defeat, and it's not a win. Actually, it is a win. You'll make all your residents completely happy. You don't need this resolution. Love your residents, they're here. This is your mandate. And if I were to judge your mandate, and I understand what happened last week, man, we were packed. This was packed with all pro-life, pro-Christian, and then possibly we thought, well, we'll get a different mandate. But if I took a vote tonight, there's no doubt, if you took a Democratic vote tonight, how it would have come out. Just by the applause. You could hear it. So the bottom line is, then if we took that as a vote, you may not like that vote. People are going to be losers or winners here tonight. Why can't everybody be a winner? Just take the high road and step out of it. You're going to be loved by your whole town. They're going to appreciate you as their legislators and their board of supervisors, and they'll all agree you've done the right thing. I think they will. So I am begging you, with all human humbleness, as a former mayor sitting in your position, take the high road. And if you want to listen to everybody here who's totally divisive, this is what this has caused. It's a hornet's nest. No one's going to get anywhere with this tonight, or tomorrow night, or any other night. You could table it 1,000 times. You're going to get the same reaction. So I beg of you for yourselves and all of the people of Newtown Borough, step out of this. You don't need the resolution. Just rescind it. And we're all winners. And you're the biggest winner. And so are they. God bless you.
Thank you, and please proceed.
Yep. My name is Tara Garcia. I'm 21 years old, and I'm a 21-year resident of Newtown Township. I'm reading a letter today that my mom wrote. She's unable to attend, so I'm just going to read it. My name is Sandy McGuigan. I have been a Newtown Township resident for 30 years. I live in Newtown Crossing. I am unable to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting. My daughter Tara has agreed to read my statement. I used to wonder why people cared so much about abortion. To me, it didn't affect my life, so I thought it was no big deal. Then, when I was expecting my first child, I was faced with this decision. I was 28 weeks pregnant. After a routine ultrasound, the doctors told me my baby would have devastating problems and advised me to abort my baby. My husband and I went from being so excited to see images of our baby that day to utter despair as we were told our child would most likely not live. All of a sudden, abortion was very personal for me. I knew in my heart that I could not make this decision. I knew that I wanted to leave the outcome in God's hands. My son was born premature, but free of any predicted problems. Today, my son is 26 years old and makes the world a better place with his kind heart and witty sense of humor. Imagine if I had listened to the doctor's advice. I would have ended the life of a perfectly healthy baby. And even if he wasn't healthy, I wouldn't love him any less. People talk about not wanting to bring a sick child into the world. By that logic, what if a healthy child becomes sick later in life? Should that child's life be ended? We talk about reproductive rights. Terminating a pregnancy is not reproductive. It is ending a life. Please do not pass the resolution. Thank you.
Don't applaud, just throw money. I'm not up here to debate, some of the earlier speakers about when life begins and when a heartbeat and all that stuff. I mean, that's all medical terms. But I'm here to tell these people that time and time again, different people came up and said, it's not in your purview. The one woman even quoted from the regs that you're for health, safety, and welfare of the residents. Well, tell me where a woman's right doesn't fit under any one of those words. They're not just words. Look up the meanings of them. It's in your purview. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about, like one guy did from another township, talk about Frankenstein babies, and another guy talked about Nazis and things like that. Was it in Kansas, somewhere in the Midwest, they put it, they put it at the polls. And a woman's right won. The people voted. It's the same thing would happen here, because a lot of people don't want to talk about the women's rights because they don't want to get shamed. A lot of their people are, the Catholics are totally against it. The one guy got up here and talked, he had 600 votes. Sure, if you stand outside the church on Sunday, I'm surprised he didn't get a lot more than 600 votes. I was brought up a Catholic. My wife is Jewish. So, these guys talk about, oh, the Jews this and the Catholics that. Well, here you go. I know all about it. I live that. I live it. One guy said, oh, it's a way to get abortion clinics in here. I don't want to see an abortion clinic in Newtown, although, if they want to come, it's okay. Why I don't want to see an abortion clinic? I live within walking distance to, at the time, the abortion clinic used to be on Comrie Road, right off the boulevard, near Byberry. The nuts, well, they call them, one guy said evil people. Well, they were evil people going to those abortion clinics. They used to block the traffic on the boulevard, major artery. They actually bombed that place once. They actually bombed. That's why I wouldn't want to see an abortion clinic in Newtown, because of these nuts, these evil people, and see them bomb an abortion clinic. It's a medical procedure. I said last time, they should keep religion and politics out of this. But remember one thing, it is in your purview. Don't let any of them people tell you any differently. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. DeApril. And Mr.
Yes,
Phillips?
Mr. Phillips, Mike Phillips.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I'm
gonna-
sorry,
I will start. I will give you 1 minute.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, I forgot to mention this. Ms. Snyder had said in remarks 2 weeks ago that no right has ever been given by the government, the Constitution, and our lawmakers has ever been taken away before. And that's simply not true. We forget about the main struggle in our country in the past is the issue that we fought over, the Civil War, slavery. And listening to these people, I can see, and I'm grateful for hearing their opinions, that people genuinely feel that a right is being ripped away from them, and that is exactly what people felt in 19th century, early 19th century, is that they had these property rights. They purchased property, and it was going to be stripped away, and there was this desperation. How am I going to maintain this economic status on my farm? I mean, very, very desperate, and it's very understandable. But what was not discussed when they discussed property rights was what was behind the property rights. Human beings were behind the property rights, and thank you for your listening, and we look forward to your comments on the origins of the resolution. Thank you.
Yep.
Christina Dory from Bensalem Township. After listening to everyone, I can see the emotion on both sides.
And I'm also starting the one minute.
That's fine. Okay. I just want to sum this up with a few names. Courtney, Nick Hoot, Tim Brent, Melissa Oden, Gianna Jensen, Claire Caldwell, Sarah Elizabeth Brown, Joshua Presley. Please remember these names. These names are people who survived an abortion. They're abortion survivors. For example, Gianna Jensen, she survived the saline method. I'm not going to go into details what that method is. It's pretty disgusting. But what saved her life was the abortionist went home, and the nurse called 911, and she got medical aid. She has cerebral palsy from the result of the abortion, but she's a survivor. So when they talk about safe abortions, they're not safe, not for these victims that survived. Or it's just a procedure, not to these people. And these are just a few of the names. And they have rights too. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Deanna Bender. I was born to a 16-year-old mother who gave me up for an adoption because I was an unplanned, unwanted pregnancy. I have 3 beautiful children, 2 beautiful grandsons. I've gone on to be successful and a contributor to society in Bucks County in Newtown, and I am here to express my concern about the platform that you guys are presenting. You don't have any entitlement. It's outside of your purview to speak on behalf of the majority of people in Newtown. I just wrote something real quick. I'll read it. I'm a little nervous, so please forgive me for stuttering. Roe v. Wade was the beginning of an era where women were led to believe it was the foundation for women to be in charge of their own bodies. Women were made to feel empowered by that choice. It was intended to make women feel it was a positive movement. The reality is, it was a chance to control who could or should have babies. Abortion clinics were set up in low-income areas, and females were given little information about options or procedures. This is anything but women empowerment. Women have been manipulated into thinking that having a child is a financial hardship and a hindrance for being successful in life, a career, and relationships. Women have been convinced that they have every right to terminate their pregnancies for any reason, and that we should. After all, how dare someone else tell us what to do, especially a man? When did the best gift, carrying a child to term and being a mother, become something despicable and unwelcomed? How did this come to pass, and why? With medical research advancing, the use of stem cells, fetal cells, amniotic fluid, placenta, and various organs for continued research become increasingly valuable, harvesting these products has become a multi-billion-dollar business. Informed consent is denied while establishments are encouraging women to voluntarily and willingly abort babies, while establishments are encouraging them, and to include C-sections. This is all accomplished under the guise of bodily autonomy and ease in planning while creating profits for doctors, hospitals, and organizations like Planned Parenthood, as well as pharmaceutical and research and development companies. For all the women who are feeling empowered and speak out on behalf of themselves, other women, their daughters and granddaughters, know that you are being played and that our bodies and its byproducts are being harvested and sold for profit under the guise of women's rights. Women are being victimized, and the perpetrators are making a profit while forcing us to do the work for them, advocating for abortions and praising the ease of C-sections. women also pay for the services and unknowingly let them take not only our physical parts of us, but our dignity as well. Thank you.
Okay, we are winding down the time for public comment. I have 2 letters that have come in while the meeting has been occurring, and I will read them. The first one is from Hal Wright from Newtown Township. I am writing, and he says, I am writing to offer my full support for the subject resolution and in defense of reproductive rights and freedoms. Anti-choice activists claim that human life begins as early as conception. In their supposed defense of human life, they give minimal weight or no weight at all to the undeniability human life of the pregnant person. Unless we embrace dogma as absolute truth, we must acknowledge that an honest answer to when life begins is, we don't know. In formulating law and public policy, we are compelled to focus on what we do know. We know that we are a free country in aspiration, if not always fact. We know that all humans capable of giving birth are persons, free persons. We know that something inside of a free person cannot be granted more rights than the person themselves. We know that something inside a free person cannot be granted the right to harm or indeed to kill the person themselves. In a free country, it cannot be. A total ban on abortion would routinely place the life of the mother and thereby the life of the fetus in jeopardy. A total ban accomplishes nothing except, in the words of Wendell Berry, the pacification of fanatics. Forbidding abortion with specified exceptions, what we typically call a partial ban, offers little additional mercy. For fear of legal entanglements, abortion providers would flee the jurisdiction or the profession. As is always true of limited resources, deficits of reproductive care would impact the poor and the immobile most severely. Persons have only those rights which we, in practice, can access and defend. In plain language, abortion bans reduce pregnant women to nothing more than breeding stock. However, in fact, lower, in fact, than breeding stock. Farm animals are rescued through termination of pregnancy without a second thought. And although I trust women to make choices about their own bodies, my trust, your trust, is irrelevant. In a free country, the right to choose is immutable. Women's rights are human rights. Thank you for your time, Hal Wright. And then the second one. Is from Kirsten Zolfo, also a Newtown resident. First and foremost, thank you, dear Newtown Township Supervisors. First and foremost, thanks to all of you for your commitment to your responsibilities in service to our community, including arduous ones like prolonged public comment sessions. My name is Kirsten Zoffo, and I live on Greenbrier Lane here in Newtown. I write to you today in support of your resolution affirming the Board of Supervisors' commitment to reproductive rights and abortion access. I share your belief that systematically stripping women of access to abortion violates their basic human rights, and I commend the supporters of this resolution on the board for standing up for the principle that one should have control over their own body. Thank you for taking a strong position on behalf of basic human rights. It makes me be proud to be a resident of this community. Is there any other? Okay. Yep. As we now transition, I just had a couple of words that I'd like to say, and then give the other board members an opportunity to say anything they would like or not. I've got to say that I've learned a lot in this process. Many of you have expressed some things that I do not agree with. I can't even figure out what it actually means. It's just not in my thought processes. Like $2 million of the American Relief Fund money going to abortion clinics. Well, okay, I'll try the best I can. So I recognize and understand your view, that you have viewpoints, and I can agree with a lot of it. I'm definitely pro-choice. I'd like the choice to be life, and just having a choice. I believe that the life of the unborn is precious, and the health, but it must be balanced with the health and the well-being of the pregnant woman. I'd like the choice to be life, but you know what? Choice, having that choosing life presupposes choice. Choice is there to have life. We have a lot of people that have agreed with us, and you all disagree with some of with this resolution. I take it. I get that. But I do need to let you know that there have been a lot of other people that do support us, do support this resolution. In fact, the letters that we received between the last meeting and this meeting were more in support of this resolution than not. I don't think you want me to read all 70 of them. They are discoverable if you need to discover them. Is this really something that's going to divide the community? I think the community is already divided. I think this community started to be divided back this past spring when the Dobbs decision was leaked. So I don't think we're doing anything that isn't already out there. In fact, I like to think that we've started a dialogue, a difficult dialogue, but I'm willing to have a discussion. We are aware that other municipalities have enacted not only resolutions in some cases, but ordinances. This resolution has no force of law. We're not forcing anything on anybody. We're sending our message to Harrisburg. So, we have done this before. We have done love is love. We have done fracking. We have done plastics. We have done Juneteenth all as resolutions. Did everybody agree with us? No. Did we do them anyway? Yes. At budget times, does everybody agree with the budget? No. But we have to enact a budget anyway. So, having said that, and I am humbled by all of this. I don't claim to be...
Excuse me, can we have order, please? The chairman did not cut anybody else off when you were talking. Thank you.
And I've actually appreciated how well it's gone both 2 weeks ago and tonight. So you don't know me personally to tell you, to be able to say whether I'm humble or not. So anyway, I will open the discussion to any other of the supervisors who would like to say a few words before we vote.
I would just like to say that these resolutions are the same for consistency. We did that on purpose. We want the message to be consistent from all the places that are passing this resolution. That's why they are the same. There is no political motive behind that whatsoever. No, it's not. We're sending a consistent message to Harrisburg and then beyond to the nation so that they know where we stand in this part of Pennsylvania and any other part of Pennsylvania that chooses to do this. One more thing.
So,
Excuse me.
let her finish. We did not interrupt you.
We have a Bands Off Our Body rally going on in Doylestown right now, which took a lot of participants that would normally be here. So again, please don't think that your side, since they are here, speaks for everybody, because they don't. Now, having said that, I appreciate all your comment. I hope you appreciate ours as well. It's a two-way conversation. You were allowed to have your say, and we do appreciate it, and we're glad to hear it. Thank you.
No.
No, thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have something to say. I said it 2 meetings ago. I thought this was a divisive topic I didn't want to bring to the Township Board of Supervisors. It's clearly divisive. A lot of passion on both sides of the argument. I didn't run for this office to have this battle. I ran for this office to stop overdevelopment like Arcadia, like Village of Newtown, too many shops in the shopping center. The public safety when it comes to fire and police. It is not in our purview, according to second-class township code, which somebody quoted, which I was impressed that they looked up. I think we should have stayed out of it. I'm not in favor of this resolution. I was in favor of the other resolutions. I can't vote for this resolution. We're going to make a lot of people, either side of this argument, really unhappy with us. I don't want to do that. I did this job for Newtown. I didn't do it for my own political aspirations or for any higher political causes. I did it for Newtown, and that's why I'm staying where I'm staying on this resolution. I'm a no on it. And I just wanted to reiterate that.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right. Seeing no further comment from the board, I'll call the question. Those in favor of this resolution, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-1. Okay. That brings us to our first round of public comment on issues not on the agenda.
Before I make my comment, I'll wait a couple minutes so everyone.
Yeah.
Now, you can go ahead.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
All right, I'll try to make this as brief as
Because we
possible.
can usually hear you over just about anything, so.
I try to be loud so everyone can hear me.
That's a comment of endearment, it's a compliment.
Oh, thank you, thank you. All right, so for people that are still here that didn't leave, my name is Bradley Cooper. I've been a resident of Newtown since 1999. I know you guys know me. I've been here a bunch of times for the same reason. It's going to be the same thing, but for people that still are here, want to listen to me and, didn't storm out for many different reasons. I went to all the local schools, Newtown Elementary School, Newtown Middle School, which is the old one, not the new one that's out now. I'm 33 years old. And I went to Council Rock North, and I even went to Bucks Community College. So I've been in Newtown schools on the Newtown side throughout my whole life, starting in the 4th grade when I moved here in 1999. A lot of people move to the suburbs because of the open land, because of it not being a city life, hustle and bustle like New York or Philadelphia or places like that. They move to the suburbs to get away from that, to have more, open land, greenery, farms, things like that or whatever. So that's what I don't like seeing happening to Newtown here and there, is a dwindling and getting more and more businesses, more and more homes, more and more places that are making it where every corner you get to, there's a business or somewhere, here or there or whatever. I know I'm reiterating the same thing I've said before or whatever, but what irritates me more is that this Wawa issue is delaying. Not that you guys like it, you might not, but I try to talk to local businesses because I'm afraid of local businesses losing thousands of dollars and even going out of business. I made a flyer up for people to come here today from the 7-Eleven, which is the most directly affected business here. And then they said, oh, we're not going to show up. Is it because of the abortion issue that's going to take up too much time? Is it because they weren't prepared? I don't know what the issue was. I don't know why they're not here. I'm not privy to that information, only you guys are. I know you guys got a lot to do, a lot of stuff you got to deal with, people hating you, people loving you, people thinking you're, the biggest piece of junk in the world. They want to, fire you. They want to do whatever to you. I get that and I understand that because I do stuff in politics or whatever, stuff that maybe you guys don't like, stuff that you do like. So I know how it feels to be belittled and berated for your views and opinions or whatever. But this Wawa thing has so much catastrophe, so many problems with it. Driving to work, I got to go past that area. I try to avoid that area, try to avoid 413 by 95 because of the traffic that's there. I tried talking to PennDOT to see maybe if I could see if they would rethink their approval of allowing Wawa to be able to get approval to change the street and redesign it. And they're like, no, their traffic study is sufficient. When the Planning Commission talked to the people over with the Wawa, Provco, and them, they only gave them like 2 or 3 days of traffic study. They didn't really give them a whole week of what it's going to do traffic-wise. The environment, they said they're going to have to run 500 feet of piping to some drainage system or to have a cut up roads and stuff. The stuff that they're going to have to do to make the property fit, what they want to put there, seems like a whole, millions and millions of dollars to do that. And I got my car fixed today at Burns Automotive. I'm unemployed now, not that I want to get into that with you guys, and I spent $500 because I wanted to support a mom and pop shop, not go back to AAA where I used to work at and pay them a couple $100 to get my car inspected because I want to support local businesses. This needs to be put now to say, no, we're not going to approve it, or approve it. Do something now. Don't keep on delaying it 2, 3, 4 meetings from now, or allowing them to dictate how your meetings are going to be, because these meetings, need to be structured. They need to be told when they're going to be here, when they're not going to be here, because people got lives, people got things to do, whatever. I'm trying to talk to local businesses. I don't want to see them go out of business, because they've been hurt since the pandemic. Wawa's been making billions of dollars because they're the only business that was open during the pandemic for a lot of the time or whatever. And I don't want to see small mom and pop shops, hoagie shops, gas stations, 7-Elevens that depend on that money to survive in this country with everything going on. So I think we need to do something about this and not continuously allow them to dictate when the meeting is when they come in here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Yes, please. Oh, yep. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Turn your mic on.
Good evening. My name is Pam Duffy, 125 Hope Road, and I live in Holland. I don't live in Newtown, but I love Newtown, and I hang out here, I shop here. I don't live in Newtown yet, I should say. I'm going to talk about the Wawa, as you may have guessed, and after what we just went through, it's probably a relief to you. I'll be brief. I just want to say, just bring to your attention, I'm sure you know about it, it's been on every news station as well as the national news, local news, everything. You know about the incident that happened in Mayfair at the Wawa. Well, I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, lived there till I was 37 years old, and Mayfair section of Northeast Philadelphia used to be a beautiful, family-oriented area, much like what Newtown is today. And you bring in a business like Wawa that is a magnet for mayhem and crime and gangs of teenagers. Newtown is not immune. If you go to Richboro, at any given time on a weekend night, Friday night, Saturday night, there are hundreds of kids in there. Looked like the cafeteria from Council Rock. When I was in there 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I couldn't believe how many kids were just buzzing around, 12, 13, 14 years old. Do not bring this to Newtown. One of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life. You can have Bedford Falls, which I think Newtown is pretty close. When I walk down your main street, and I know that's the borough, and that's different than you guys, but you guys, you've preserved it, and Newtown's beautiful. Please keep Newtown beautiful. It's Bedford Falls. Don't make it Pottersville. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Duffy.
Hello, John DeApril, Newtown Grant, biggest and the best. You know, growing up in Philadelphia, my first 46 years, sometimes I resent people bringing up Philadelphia and comparing it to Newtown, you know, because there's nothing like Newtown. Newtown's the best. You know, I'm so glad I got out of, you know, Philadelphia. Anyhow, my friend over here, you know, said he was only 33. More than twice his age. You know, I don't know why Newtown canceled tonight or whatever, but I'm sure they have their reasons. I mean, Newtown's not the only place they're building. You look over in Falls, there's a bunch of them, and, you know, don't know what. Thank you guys for having to go through all that stuff with the women's rights. You know, Johnny Mack wasn't man enough to show tonight. He says that COVID, he had COVID before. He's using that excuse again. And last time he had COVID, he was on the phone. Why couldn't he do that tonight?
He's not here to defend himself, John.
Yeah, well, he's watching. He's watching. Hi,
John.
Johnny. How you doing?
John, that's not fair.
On Facebook, which he tends to put a lot of his stuff on, I mean, people are asking him to leave, you know. So I thought maybe we got lucky and he left. Thanks.
Just to reiterate, John Mack does have COVID. He sounded horrible when he was in bed.
But he used that excuse before.
You can have it twice.
Yeah, people he hangs around with.
Sir.
It's been quite an evening, hasn't it? So, my name's actually Phil Diamore. I was here for the 501 Washington Crossing Road lot, and I want to build a home here.
Yes.
We got smiles now finally. So,
well, it's on the agenda.
It was on the agenda. I know.
It was unfortunately.
I had a comment, so I was looking at the agenda, and I wasn't sure how this all works. I've never been here before, and I've never been in a...
We're getting there.
Three short items, I think, to get to you.
We're not there yet. We'll get there soon.
Okay.
Okay. So, any other public comment? Okay. Then my next order of business is reports of boards, committees, and commissions. I have a very short report. I attended the NFA, the Newtown Fire Association, on Monday night. Got a recap about the beer fest that happened last week. And we also detailed that Newtown Fire Association President Warren Dallas Chief Forsyth, myself, Ms. Snyder, and representatives from the borough met for our first Fire Services Committee meeting. It was slated to go an hour, hour and a half, and it went like over 2 hours. So we had a good discussion of fire services and what we'll need to be looking at going forward in the next few years. That's all I had. John is not here. How about Madam Secretary?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay, great. Well, I'm looking that way. Mr. Calabro, anything to?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. That brings us to, I have to skip all my Wawa notes. The solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on our report is a consideration of a decision. At your last meeting, you held a PRD variance hearing for the Brennans at 290 Stanford Place. You approved that PRD variance. It would require a motion to approve the decision and order in that case.
Do we have such a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do we have a second? Okay, yeah, you beat me to it. I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board? From the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the PRD variance decision for 290 Stanford Place, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Second item and last is Mr. Damore. Damore or Damore? Okay, Damore. Okay. Well, come on up. This is an application to the Zoning Hearing Board that will be heard on October 6th, 2022. Mr. Damore wishes to construct a single-family home on a lot that is non-conforming in that it is undersized, both area-wise and width-wise. And he's here to, I guess, ask the board, well, what are you here for? They're here to consider if they want to send the solicitor to oppose it or take a position on it. And usually they jump right in because rarely do folks show up, but you're here.
Yeah, and it might be pretty quick because I think we are going to do a small continuance with the zoning board to next month. So we did have some stuff that did come up with the planning commission that we want to address and make sure everything is kind of tied up. But we were on the agenda, and my builder and I, for myself, my fiance, want to move here and build a home here. So I thought it was important to me at least to come and see you all and just explain the situation and see if there's any questions I can answer to help for when we return next month. I think the planning commission there was something that came up around the, the rights of the lot to be sold by the gentleman next door, Edward Schwartz, who's actually the representative for the estate. I believe it was his parents' estate. So we have that evidence here now. And then there's also some questions about the lot itself, because it goes back to 1982 when the lot was originally split off. Which we do have some information here on the title that was pulled, if you guys would like a copy of that. I don't know.
Well, I would suggest that if it's going to be continued and you are going to request a continuance, that you do that with the zoning hearing board directly.
The builder will do it. My builder has they want to make sure everything is tied up for you guys to make sure.
Okay. And that this board need not take action on it. It will come back before this board when it's rescheduled for the November, I would assume, zoning hearing board.
That seemed like a good outcome. I was at that planning commission meeting when it was discussed, and there were a number of things I thought, well, that's going to take a little while to gather that information.
Yeah, we're trying to find, I guess, some information that things recorded at the township since it was so long ago, over 30 years. So the lot has had stuff paid on it for over 30 years. And there's a deed, there's a parcel number, but they're trying to find the paperwork, I guess, from the plan itself.
Well, the plan is important because it's going to come down to what zoning was in effect at the time that the lot was created.
Right. That's what
And if the zoning has since changed to render the lot undersized, then it's a non-conforming lot. But you've got to show that it was legal, that it was a conforming lot at the time that the lot was created.
Right, which was sometime in 1982, right?
Which predates the joint municipal zoning ordinance, by the way.
Yeah, but the problem is they're having trouble finding the plan. So, well, again, they're trying to figure, that's the issue, I think, trying to find the plan from 30-plus years ago that the township doesn't seem to have. So, trying to figure out the best course forward, considering they've been paying taxes on this parcel since 1982 as a separate dedicated parcel. So, just wanted to get your opinion, because we'll be back, and I just want to make sure I introduce myself.
Mr. Solicitor, why does this gentleman have to come back before us?
Oh, I don't know that he does.
Okay, if it's okay with us that he goes to the zoning hearing board for them to decide, why can't that stand? Why can't we make that decision tonight?
You can make that decision tonight, absolutely.
Okay. I'm all for it to go to the zoning hearing board and let them decide on this decision.
Is that the consensus of the board?
I'm good with that also.
I am too.
Okay, great. Then we don't have to come back here.
Okay.
And you can work with the planning commission and get your continuance and go to the zoning hearing board.
Okay, do we have to go back to the planning commission next month? I assume
I believe so.
It's
It sounds
probably a
like they
good
wanted
idea.
to see you again.
Right, and we have support from the neighbor on the one side, and we're talking to them on the other side, so I think that's probably best practice as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Which
Yes,
it
always.
would be. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I just have one small question. Were you able to go to the county and get the chain of title? That's what really
They're
you're
trying to
looking
get
for?
that, yeah, they're trying to get that now. Everything seems to date back again to this date in 1982. It seemed like there could be some lapse in documentation somewhere, but again, it's very strange. I think they're trying to research it, but again, there's a parcel, there's tax payments, we have, there's a lot of this stuff that's out there, which is very strange. It's very, very strange. The lawyer and the engineer that spoke at the planning commission said they've never seen this before. It's very, very weird, yeah. So we're in discussions about that, trying to tie up everything we can to make sure everyone's comfortable, or asking for the right relief.
Great. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you. So I could tell the builder that we're okay not to come back here next month?
Correct.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
The board has decided not to take any action, so you're good with this board. You just have to go to the zoning hearing
So you
board.
don't have to approve it
Correct.
here already?
We don't approve anything here.
Okay.
It's all zoning hearing board.
Okay, so you're going to move forward. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great
Yeah,
evening.
you too.
Thank you. That concludes our report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, that, I believe, brings us to Mr. Lewis, manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General fund balance as of this evening is $6,920,700. Plan expirations before the board with no action required. We have Chief Forsythe to give the monthly Emergency Services Department report. Even, Chief.
Good evening, everyone. The report for the month of August. We had 97 calls for service. We completed 100 fire safety inspections in Newtown Township and 10 in Newtown Borough. We had a total of 12 calls in the borough. Emergency services responded to 8 calls of service, and NFA responded to 4 of the 10 calls for service. Total calls of service between the borough and the township were 84. In the 97 calls we responded to, 56 of them were EMS calls, 19 were alarm systems, 5 were dwelling fires, 5 were brush fires. We had 3 assisted a squad, 2 traffic accidents, 2 wires calls, 1 grill, 3 fumes calls, and 1 rubbish call for a total of 97 calls. The Fire Association did have their beer fest on September 17th. Thank everyone for helping and participating. I had the pleasure tonight to present a unit citation to the crew of Rescue 3. On July 4th, we had a serious fire in the Newtown Gate section. It was reported with entrapment, and Northampton was on a call at Buck and Middle Holland. They took the call in immediately. They had a 3-minute response time, and they were able to make the rescue of the victim, the homeowner, off the roof. So we acknowledge them tonight for their quick response and a successful outcome to that fire call. So that is my report. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for the chief?
Just a comment, I was sorry to miss the meeting the other night. It was my high holiday, so that's why I wasn't there. I'll be there next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks very much.
That concludes our report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. I believe that brings us to bills and minutes. Okay, yep.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for our September 14th Board of Supervisors meeting.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second. I do have one slight change that I just wanted to make you aware of, because I've already talked to our stenographer. The Beer Fest was held on Saturday, not Sunday, and the minutes said Sunday. So I just made that change. Yes.
Thank you for noticing, because I didn't. Yes, thank you.
So we got a motion and a second. Any?
There has to be a motion with the amendment, correct, with the correction.
Yeah, make the motion with the correction.
Motion with the correction?
Yeah.
And a second for the correction.
And who was the second?
I'm the second, waiting
Okay,
for the,
we
we good?
Is the motion okay with the second? With the change?
Ellen,
Ellen, you okay?
You good with the change?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Same, second.
And Kyle is, okay, so we got a motion and a second with the change. Any further discussion from the board? Any from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
I'd like to make a motion to pay our bills in the amount of $244,000, $244,040.73.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of paying the bills as of September 28th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
I'd like to make a motion to approve our total of interfund transfers in the amount of $271,420 even.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the interfund transfers for September 28th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. We come to the second round of public comment. Any public comment this evening? Going once, going twice?
John DeApril, Newtown Grant, biggest and the best. Now that you got that one ordinance, that one resolution done, once you do a resolution on when you could put up political signs. A lot of places have 30 days. You know, hate seeing these signs up for 3 months. And yeah, it's funny, I left it home. I have an 8x10 mat, because it come out of an inkjet, it's not glossy. An 8x10 picture of a guy putting up an illegal sign. And funny thing, he was here tonight. He was one of the speakers. So, that's all. Thanks.
All right. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move right on to old business. Any old business? Any new business? Any need for an executive session?
No need for an executive session.
Okay. Without exception, I'll call for an adjournment. We are adjourned.